Welcome to Panda Tale. I hope you have a great time listening to the story. If you enjoy it, don't forget to give me a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. I am his wedded wife of 10 years, but when he ascended to the throne, he only made me a noble consort. I stood up to receive the imperial decree and asked the young eunuch who came to deliver it, "So who is the empress?" He trembled, not daring to look me in the eye. It's Lady Sophia Chen." I smiled faintly and waved him away. In the palace, all the palace maids carefully observed my expression, but I just held the imperial decree and laughed. How ridiculous, an empress appointed for love. 2 months after my appointment as noble consort, I still hadn't met the empress, but I did meet the emperor. The reason was simple. The decree appointing the empress had been held up by the cabinet for 2 months, making him so angry he almost used the imperial staff. The new emperor, finding himself in this predicament, stormed straight into my palace and said immediately, "Victoria Sterling, write a memorial tomorrow requesting to relinquish the empress position." I stared in shock. Was this really the emperor's solution? Alexander looked very annoyed. "There's no other way now. If you voluntarily give up the empress position, everything will be easier to resolve." I laughed bitterly. The emperor had never explained anything, yet wanted to take my empress position and expected me to voluntarily submit a memorial to give it up. "Your Majesty is dreaming." He was angered by my uncooperative attitude. "Victoria, I've told you before, there's nothing between us anymore. My heart only has Sophia." My voice was sad. "Your Majesty and I may have no feelings left, but don't we have 10 years of gratitude? Since childhood, I was raised by the Grand Empress Dowager, thinking only of how to become your crown princess and help you achieve great things. In our 10 years in the Eastern Palace, I never acted jealously or arrogantly. I managed the Eastern Palace for you, raised your children, you saw it all clearly. Even Lady Sophia never spoke a word of reproach to me. So what have I done wrong to deserve being demoted from wife to concubine like this? I've given everything to your Majesty, even my children. My children." The more I spoke, the uglier Alexander's expression became. When I mentioned the last part, he immediately shouted, "Nuff! What nonsense are you speaking?" Tears rolled down my face. He seemed somewhat reluctant, took a deep breath and said, "Tomorrow I want to see your memorial. If not, don't blame me for being ruthless." I looked at him with tear-filled eyes as he hurriedly left. Ruby immediately came forward to support me. "My lady, what should we do? Must we really write the memorial?" Jade beside me was so angry she cried. "How humiliating. The emperor once swore eternal love with you, my lady, and now those vows have all gone to the dogs. Watch your words." I scolded her. "Ruby, Jade, you're now senior palace maids in the noble consort's palace. Every word and action represents my will. Such disrespectful words must not be spoken again." Ruby's face was filled with indignation. "You are his legitimate wife appointed by the Grand Empress Dowager. Must you really accept being a noble consort?" I said nothing, just took a handkerchief from a junior palace maid to wash my face twice in warm rose water until no trace of tears remained. Then I signaled for the maids to take the water away and smiled gently. "Noble consort then, noble consort. If the emperor is determined to have his way, what benefit is there in my resistance?" Ruby hesitated. "But my lady, must we really submit a memorial to give up the empress position?" "The empress position cannot be kept, but submit a memorial to give it up." "Never." I lowered my voice. "Suffering losses while letting them gain all the benefits. As if there could be such an easy thing in this world." The next day, news spread from the inner palace that noble consort Victoria was gravely ill. Rumors said the emperor had visited noble consort Victoria the night before, said something, then left in anger. That night, the noble consort suddenly fell ill and couldn't rise. When the imperial physician came to examine her, the noble consort coughed up blood, throwing the entire palace into panic. The physician could do nothing, only saying the noble consort's suppressed emotions had caused her blood and Q to attack her heart. Her meridians were in chaos. She could only rest quietly and must not suffer any more agitation. Once these words were spoken, the entire palace buzzed with gossip. Everyone knew noble consort Victoria's health had always been excellent. How could she suddenly have blood attacking her heart? Not only did the court officials find it hard not to feel indignant, but even the concubines in the palace felt the same. At this moment, I was leisurely reclining on my bed, nibbling grapes sent as tribute from the south, listening to Jade recount her morning visit to Alexander. The servant girl just started crying, saying my lady had forced herself to write the memorial to give up the empress position. But halfway through writing, she suddenly coughed up blood. Now my lady lies in bed unconscious, unable to continue writing, and could only send this servant to report. If my lady is so gravely ill she cannot manage the 6 palaces, then what use is this empress position? Better for His Majesty to appoint someone else as empress. She told it very vividly. The servant presented the memorial. You didn't see His Majesty's expression, it immediately darkened. Then he asked the servant something, but she just kowtowed and cried. Finally, the emperor angrily dismissed the servant. Ruby then gave me a peeled grape. Our midnight effort catching 2 chickens and getting 3 large bowls of blood wasn't wasted. Just the memorial alone was soaked with a whole bowl. No wonder it shocked them. I almost felt nauseous. This scheme was my idea. Find some fresh chicken blood, pour part on the memorial pretending I'd coughed blood in grief, pour the rest into chicken intestines and swallow them. When the physician came, I'd cough up blood right before them. Real blood, who could tell if it was human or chicken blood? If the physician couldn't diagnose an illness, naturally he'd conclude I'd fallen ill from suppressed emotions after being demoted from legitimate wife to concubine. As for where to get fresh chicken blood in the middle of the night, though palace rules said consorts connecting with the imperial kitchen was a great crime, I, Victoria, had been brought into the palace at age 8 by the Grand Empress Dowager for education. By the time I married the crown prince and was made noble consort, I'd been rolling around in the Forbidden City for over 10 years. I'd long ago placed my people everywhere in the palace. Finding 2 chickens from the imperial kitchen, what was so difficult about that? As long as money arrived, everything could be resolved. And money. In the inner palace, I had rewards from the Grand Empress Dowager. Outside, I had the Sterling family's backing. In the entire harem, I feared I was probably the wealthiest. From then on, I peacefully recuperated in my palace. The court officials finally stopped arguing and reluctantly agreed to make Sophia the empress. The struggle for the empress position that had dragged on for 3 months since the enthronement finally ended. The entire inner and outer court, even people in the capital, all pitied me losing my empress position because of the emperor's favoritism. Sophia officially became empress, taking control of the 6 palaces' administration. And I lived in a small corner palace, living a precarious life. When the position isn't righteous, the people's hearts are lost. I looked toward Phoenix Palace and muttered, "Don't be hasty. This is just the beginning. We have plenty of time to watch." 3 months later, I finally met the Empress for the first time. For 3 months, I'd been confined to my palace for recuperation, forbidden from participating in any affairs. Even the junior consorts who used to be in my palace had all been transferred away. It seemed they feared I'd scheme and form cliques during my illness. I didn't mind, focusing only on recuperating. Didn't they say we gave up the Empress position and they'd leave us in peace? Now they still had to worry about future troubles. There certainly wouldn't be few. I secretly instructed Ruby and Jady. The Forbidden City has never been an easy place to live. Everyone who enters gets tainted. Moreover, Sophia was never a generous person. Today was the day the entire harem came to pay respects to the Empress, and also my first day of lifted confinement. I rose early and had my attendants prepare me carefully. I wore a simple pale white palace dress with just a few silk flowers in my hair before going out. This attire was probably even plainer than some favored noble ladies in the palace. I hoped the Empress at Phoenix Palace would understand I was giving her face and not be ungrateful. Your servant of the Sterling family pays respects to Your Majesty the Empress. May your majesty have 10,000 blessings and golden peace. I stepped forward and performed a grand kowtow before the main hall of Phoenix Palace. Sophia sat on her throne without moving. I kept my head down but could still hear the light sound of teacup meeting saucer. She wanted to assert her dominance over me. I sighed inwardly. Sophia still acted as before, only knowing to follow her own wishes. Giving me trouble now brought her no benefit. Didn't she know? It was just that she disliked me for so long, now having the chance to suppress me. Why wouldn't she use it? So I kept kneeling. Perhaps the Empress had finished a cup of tea, but she still didn't call me to rise. Other consorts filed in one by one and saw noble consort Victoria kneeling on the ground, not daring to breathe loudly. After a long while, I heard Phoenix Palace's doors close. Clearly all the consorts had arrived. She intended to use me to display her imperial authority. I didn't speak up, but that didn't mean I wasn't calculating. At this moment, kneeling here, I was already thinking of how to spread this incident throughout the inner palace, outer court, even to the imperial court. But before I could finish planning, I heard someone speak up. Your Majesty the Empress, the noble consort has just recovered from illness. I fear she cannot endure kneeling so long. I beg your Majesty to graciously allow her to rise. It was a royal consort. I understood immediately. She was the former crown prince's respected consort. In terms of seniority, she outranked Sophia and had borne a son and daughter. Only someone who'd been in the inner palace for years like her would dare speak to the Empress this way. What does royal consort mean by this? Her Majesty the Empress is master of the 6 palaces. Whoever she tells to kneel must kneel. How can we consorts interfere? A coquettish voice rang out. I was startled. In this palace, who dared speak so presumptuously? This voice I'd never heard before. It certainly wasn't someone promoted from the Eastern Palace. Perhaps someone newly entered after the Emperor's enthronement. She must be greatly favored. I was shocked. When I managed the Eastern Palace, how could any favored person dare be so improper? Now no longer under my management, indeed. The Empress finally coughed lightly. Nuff, don't be disrespectful. She paused, then continued. Oh my, look at my memory. I was just drinking tea and forgot Sister Victoria was still kneeling down there. Rise quickly. I was helped up by Ruby and walked unsteadily to sit at the Empress's left hand. Sophia now wore a smile. The noble consort has been recuperating for months and surely hasn't met the new sisters who've entered the palace. My heart secretly wished she'd soon forget everything like someone with amnesia, but outwardly I smiled and said, Your Majesty is right. During the selection, I truly knew nothing. They must all be peerless beauties. Your Majesty, grant me the favor of meeting a few. At my mention of beauties, the Empress's face briefly darkened but quickly returned to normal. These are Lady Isabella Fox and Lady Lily Chen, daughters of meritorious families. Noble Lady Beatrice, Noble Lady Catherine, and Noble Lady Margaret were selected from among the common people. Noble consort, you should get along well with them. If anything is improper, feel free to teach them directly. I thought to myself, I don't need to teach anyone anymore. That's your job now. Ignoring what she said, the Empress continued giving instructions for a while, mainly about how everyone in the palace must follow palace rules. As she was speaking, suddenly someone came in to report. Someone from the benevolent Peace Palace has come to report that the third prince wishes to pay respects to Her Majesty the Empress. The Empress's eyes immediately lit up. Quickly let him in. Truth be told, I was also very excited. Palace rules had always dictated that princes and princesses be raised in separate palaces under the Empress's supervision. Birth mothers could only see them a few times each month. So when I was still in the Eastern Palace, I had personally raised Edward, Marcus William, and several princesses. Third Prince Marcus was the child I loved most, because he was Sophia's son, the one most favored by the Emperor and most likely to be made crown prince. I had invested much effort in teaching him. From reading and horseback riding to cultivating moral character, Marcus was an obedient, intelligent, diligent child. Though only 8 years old, he already had the bearing of an heir. Marcus entered and performed the ceremony. Your son greets Mother Empress. Sophia smiled like a blooming flower. Marcus, come quickly to Mother Empress. But Marcus first knelt before me. Your son greets Mother Consort. Has Mother Consort's health improved? He looked at me intently. Marcus sees Mother Consort's complexion is still not good. You should rest more and take your medicine regularly. Only after speaking did he reluctantly go toward the Empress. I almost cried. I wasn't ashamed of this child I'd loved since childhood. Today, among everyone, besides Marcus, no one cared about my health, but the Empress's expression looked very gloomy. She forced a smile, stroked Marcus's hair, and asked about his studies and daily life. Then she had the servants take Marcus to the rear hall for refreshments. After Marcus left, the Empress immediately turned and glared at me, then addressed the consorts. The Forbidden City has its own rules. Yesterday I discussed with His Majesty, from now on, princes and princesses will be raised in benevolent peace palace under my care. Birth mothers may only visit on festival occasions or once a month. As for the rest, she glanced at me, no one is allowed near benevolent peace palace, even half a step. Before I could speak, the royal consort cried out, once a month. Wasn't it once every 3 days before? The Empress looked at her warningly, but she didn't care, walking straight up to the Empress and kneeling. Your Majesty, the first princess and fourth prince cannot go without seeing me. I beg your Majesty. I don't know what royal consort means today, opposing Her Majesty the Empress everywhere like this. Such disrespect doesn't seem fitting for a consort. That gentle yet sharp voice rang out again. I looked coldly. It was Isabella, newly entered into the palace. Looking at the glittering jewelry on her person, she must be greatly favored, but speaking so presumptuously showed a true lack of upbringing. I glanced at Sophia. If it were me, I certainly wouldn't tolerate such a person, but it seemed the Empress didn't mind. This one who always stood up to speak for the Empress must be her trusted confidante. I swept my gaze over the consorts. The first prince's mother had passed away. The second prince had died young. The second princess's mother was noble Lady Wang, and the third princess's mother was Lady Grace. They seemed about to kneel and plead too, but were frightened by Isabella's words and dared not move, only looking at the Empress with pleading eyes. I sighed softly, then heard the Empress say angrily, as the royal consort, saying I don't know how to care for the princes. If you're so fond of kneeling, go kneel in the heaven hall. Kneel for 1 double hour, then return to your palace to reflect. She turned to look at me. The noble consort's health isn't well. Why come here for nothing? Go back and rest. I don't need you to pay respects anymore. Then she waved her hand in anger. All of you, withdraw. Having said that, she turned and withdrew to the inner hall. The consorts looked at each other. All that could be heard was the royal consort sobbing as she knelt on the ground. Isabella glanced at me smugly before leaving first. The others also departed one by one. I walked out of the palace and got on my sedan chair. Before going far, I heard someone calling me. I turned to see it was Isabella. She walked over with a bright smile, not performing any ceremony, just speaking in her coquettish voice. If I were the noble consort, I certainly wouldn't go out and lose people's hearts. I'd just close my palace doors and recuperate. Don't you think so, Your Highness? My heart was alarmed, not because of Isabella, but because in just 3 months of not managing the harem, things had become this chaotic. I'd been in the palace over 10 years and had never seen anyone so impudent. For a moment I didn't know how to respond. I glanced at Ruby and Jade and saw they were more shocked than angry. I thought for a moment, then smiled. Sister Isabella is absolutely right. My health is weak now. I fear I don't know how much longer I'll live. Better to return to my palace and recuperate, so as not to be an eyesore to others. Without paying attention to her shocked expression, I ordered the sedan bearers to return to my palace. As soon as we entered, Jade finally came to her senses. My lady, why didn't you punish her? She's clearly trying to humble herself. She's just a small lady. I raised my hand to cut her off, but my mind was still calculating. Before, I thought Sophia had some ability to sit on the Empress throne, but now it seems. I called out to Ruby and Jade. The two approached, and I instructed in a low voice, "Spread the news about my humiliation today as quickly as possible. But don't let anyone catch our weakness. Also, about the Empress not allowing mothers to see their children, and Isabella's disrespect." I paused, then asked, "Is Isabella the current favorite?" I called over a young eunuch standing in the corner. "Tell me what you investigated." The eunuch bowed his head and replied, "Reporting to your highness, His Majesty currently spends most of each month with the Empress. The rest is mostly with Lady Isabella. The other noble ladies and ladies also get a few days. The Empress's people also reported that some time ago, His Majesty and the Empress had an argument, vaguely heard to be about Lady Isabella. Before that, they argued once, seemingly about your highness. After these two arguments, His Majesty was cold to the Empress for 7 or 8 days each time, but then made up." I nodded. "At first just a few double hours, then 1 or 2 days, escalating to 3 or 4 days, now it's 7 or 8 days. I waved for him to withdraw, then instructed Ruby and Jade to spread the word that Isabella lacked virtue and caused discord between the Emperor and Empress. As for other matters, speak as you see fit. Make sure this reaches my brother's ears. But remember to be careful, absolutely don't let anyone discover it's us." Ruby nodded. Jade smiled. "I don't dare boast, but your highness's people are spread throughout the palace. We can grasp all movements in the inner palace without going outside. Who could discover anything? Even if they did, they couldn't trace it back to our people who are all loyal." I lowered my head, caressing the silver plum blossom nail guard inlaid with jade. "Don't be overconfident. Initially I thought Sophia didn't know how to manage, but I didn't expect the inner palace to show signs of chaos so quickly." I laughed coldly. Before, I exhausted myself managing these restless people, yet he was ungrateful. If he doesn't want me to manage anymore, then I don't mind letting this harem become even more chaotic. I stood up and stretched. Emperor and Empress aren't ordinary husband and wife who only care about romantic feelings. Let's see how he feels about the Empress he personally chose. Jade approached to help me remove my outer robe, smiling, "Your Highness, just rest. You've expended so much effort for His Majesty over the years, yet he never understood. Now let them see how long this inner palace can remain peaceful under Sophia's management without your highness." Palace affairs quickly developed many problems. First, the birthday tribute preparation for respected consort Jing was somewhat sloppy, displeasing the consort. One must know that respected consort Jing was a consort from the late emperor's time, now 80 years old, a longevity star in the palace. Even the Empress Dowager didn't dare slight her. Then, vassal states presented a series of tributes, but the distribution among consorts was unfair, causing quite a stir. Not long after, even problems arose with the princes. When the royal consort visited the fourth prince, she discovered that the weather had turned cold. The coal allocated to the fourth prince's quarters had been reduced. She immediately brought people to the Cheongqing Palace and knelt. Upon seeing the emperor, she wept. The emperor, already troubled by the Northwest war situation and in a foul mood, said a couple of words to the empress, then let it pass. The empress felt aggrieved. The royal consort angrily came to find me and cried, "What nonsense about princes receiving allocations according to regulations. Edward has none, only I provide extra. But who doesn't know William was born prematurely with a weak constitution? Every autumn he needs coal burning daily. How could the regular allocation be enough? Sister, when you managed affairs, you never let the children suffer. But with her, it's one allocation after another. I think she doesn't pity the children at all. Relying on being the legitimate mother, she doesn't regard secondary princes as anything. She says it's allocations, but when I visited Edward before, I saw even his clothing wasn't sufficient. The poor child was shivering with cold. Though not my child, I couldn't bear it. I'm afraid she thinks having a legitimate son means she can harm all the other princes to be satisfied. But what legitimate son? Everyone knows what methods she used to become empress. A daughter of a minor border scholar, how can her background compare to us consorts of high status? Yet she struts around all day thinking herself so capable. I maintained a sorrowful expression while listening, occasionally having Ruby pour more tea for her. The royal consort was clearly so angry she'd lost all reason. Usually she was the most cautious person, yet now her words were full of disrespect. But I didn't stop her, just had everyone except Ruby and Jade withdraw early. To be honest, the royal consort's words were exactly what I wanted to hear, refreshing beyond words. The royal consort cursed for a long while before stopping, picking up the teacup for a big gulp, then setting it down somewhat embarrassed. Today I was too hot-headed, troubling sister to sit here listening to my crazy ranting. How embarrassing. I smiled. Why be formal with me, sister? When we were in the Eastern Palace together, when did you come here and I spoke formally with you? I put away my smile. But whatever sister says to me is fine. Once you leave here, you mustn't discuss the Empress anymore. The royal consort sighed, looking at me. Sister, you've always been the most virtuous. In the Eastern Palace, everyone remembered your kindness. Speaking of caring for children, you always treated them as your own. I truly admire you. When the fourth princess had an epidemic, it was you who risked life and death to save her. This debt of gratitude I could never repay in a lifetime. The Empress position should have been yours. If you were Empress, there definitely wouldn't be such troubles in this palace. I don't know what His Majesty was thinking. I lowered my head. Sister, you must know His Majesty's feelings for her run deep, 8 or 9 years now. Haven't we always been suppressed by her? The royal consort laughed coldly. Before I married, my mother instructed me that His Highness the Crown Prince and Miss Sterling were childhood sweethearts with deeper feelings than others. When the time came, I should be virtuous and not be jealous. The result, this famous childhood romance was cut short by her in just 1 year. Sister, don't resent His Majesty. Whether he's deeply affectionate or fickle, don't we know clearly. Though I shared his bed for 10 years and bore him 2 children. Now what? When I damaged my health bearing William, he turned his back and forgot me. Now even Isabella dares confront me. She observed my expression. You won't still think of him, will you? How shameless of me to say this. Your Highness, Jade quickly spoke up. The royal consort, knowing she'd mill silent, looking at me worriedly. My child. Pain twisted in my heart, though coldness showed on my face. I haven't forgotten. No matter what else I might forget, I could never forget that child. But now I'm not favored, have no children, lost my Empress position, and my health is ruined. What can I do? Perhaps my words were too pathetic. The royal consort, frightened, took a long while before speaking. Sister, do you think your illness was caused by someone's harm? Finally we'd come to this. My heart stirred slightly, but my face showed nothing. Who would harm me? When His Majesty demanded I give up the Empress position myself, surely he wouldn't want my life. The royal consort shook her head fearfully. Not His Majesty. She lowered her voice. I mean the person in Phoenix Palace. Don't you suspect her? I remember clearly, back in the Eastern Palace, she was the one who brought that cup of medicine to your room. Then His Majesty protected her vigorously. Don't you suspect her? I lowered my head in prolonged silence before looking up with exhaustion. I'm tired. Let's invite sister for tea another day. Watching the royal consort's expression change from reluctance to sorrow to anger before she finally rose and left, Jade clapped her hands smiling. Your Highness, this move is brilliant. The royal consort has wide connections. This move ensures that person can't explain herself even with 100 mouths. I smiled, shaking my head. I originally had no intention of using this to harm her, but when the royal consort asked, I thought, my sudden illness must make outsiders suspicious. If we don't use this excuse, wouldn't we waste a good opportunity? Ruby frowned. Your Highness, are the first prince and fourth prince really being deliberately mistreated by the Empress? No. I shook my head firmly. She's always been arrogant, not bothering with the children. But it's true she doesn't care at all. Now with the Northwest war situation tense, the palace needs to economize. I don't know what she's thinking, but perhaps she's economized to the point of cutting the children's portions. I frowned too. Was probably don't have people in benevolent peace palace. Choose a few of my people, give them money for tea, and slip them into benevolent peace palace. Yes, Ruby said before withdrawing. I felt somewhat relieved. The Empress managed palace affairs too superficially, completely unconcerned about the children, and had offended the consorts. The royal consort might not seem favored, but she had the highest family background in the palace, with connections to major clans, and was respected by the consorts. Behind her was a powerful family. Now she'd confronted the Empress. I just needed to wait for the consort's anger, for the Empress to lose her authority and everyone's trust. Let's see if she could still sit peacefully on that Empress throne. The palace was in continuous turmoil. By New Year's, needless to say, many problems occurred during the festivities. Fireworks accidentally set fire to firewood at Eternal Prosperity Palace on New Year's Eve. Servants caught colds and sneezed right in front of the ministers. The kitchen lacked walnuts for making tangyuan during the Lantern Festival. All small matters, but enough to annoy people. The emperor, having endured since his enthronement without speaking up, finally couldn't hold back. But ultimately it was the Empress Dowager who couldn't bear it. Right after the first month, she summoned the emperor. He didn't emerge until half the day had passed, having been thoroughly scolded. When a palace maid from the Empress Dowager's palace came to report, she couldn't help laughing. His Majesty must have known he was wrong. Not daring to argue back even half a word, Jade laughed continuously. Your Highness, Ruby ran in. They just reported. His Majesty left the Empress Dowager's palace and went straight to Phoenix Palace. Seems they argued again. His Majesty is now storming around the Imperial Garden in a rage. Looks like he's heading our way. Quick! I hurriedly set down the dried grapes and rushed into the inner hall. Help me change clothes. Where's Sparrow? Call her to do my makeup. The same sick look as when I first fell ill. All of you stay here and attend with sorrowful expressions, as if you're keeping vigil at my deathbed. Understand. The news traveled fast. Shortly after, someone announced His Majesty had arrived. Before him was a person with deathly pale complexion lying on the bed, breath barely perceptible. Victoria, Jade, and Ruby stood by attending, faces full of sorrow. When greeting him, they even shed tears. How did it get this bad? Alexander looked over, clearly frightened. Have the physicians come to examine her? I weakly replied. The physicians come daily to check my pulse. It's just my fortune is thin. This was followed by a series of violent coughs that made him frantically pat my back. I quickly lay back down. Don't touch me, you dog of an emperor. Didn't the Empress say your health had improved? That you could go pay respects to her? She even punished you with kneeling then. I saw his expression gradually darken and quickly stabbed deeper. Paying respects to Her Majesty the Empress is my duty. No matter how poor my health, I cannot, cough cough. Jade quickly brought me tea. Alexander's face was gloomy, not knowing what he was thinking. Paying respects to the Empress. Victoria, weren't you always the proudest? Why bow your head like this? Look what you've become. Tears welled in my eyes, and I couldn't speak anymore. I was taught from childhood to follow etiquette and observe palace rules, to think of your Majesty in all things. Now you tell me to be a concubine, so naturally I must obey the Empress. But the Empress, cough cough the Empress. How is the Empress? He asked while taking the medicine bowl from Jade. The Empress is very good to me. Very good to all the 6 palaces. Your Majesty, rest assured. I looked pitiful with tearful eyes while drinking the medicine he fed me. Alexander stared at me intently, as if wanting to say something but couldn't bear to. He was probably doubting. Victoria, who'd always been strong and liked arguing with him, how had she become someone else? But seeing me so gravely ill, he couldn't bring himself to mock me. I ignored his scrutinizing gaze and said softly, Your Majesty hasn't visited in so long. Did you come for something? Alexander hesitated for a while before speaking. Sophia is managing affairs for the first time and isn't skilled, often making mistakes. Victoria, you've always been most thorough in your work. Could you? Cough cough. I hurriedly coughed violently, looking to me to help Sophia with work. He surely wanted to find a scapegoat for the woman he loved. When I made any mistakes in my work before, he criticized me mercilessly without showing any mercy. Yet I never saw him call anyone to help me. Working hard without thanks, how could I accept? Already sitting in that position, one must do the work properly. If Sophia wants to be empress, she must understand to wear the crown, one must bear its weight. Now Alexander didn't know what to say. Catching a sick person to work, forget about basic humanity. I couldn't do it anyway. He suddenly sat down beside me and lowered his head. Victoria, I really miss when you were healthy. I suppressed my anger at this dog emperor. My health is truly too weak. When I'm better, I'll help your majesty worry about things. Cough, cough. Victoria, I'm leaving. Alexander seemed angry but had no reason to lose his temper at me, a sick person. I'll visit you again later. He strode out quickly, even knocking over a glazed vase at the door. Goodbye. Don't come again. Next time you argue with the Empress, don't come find me. I quickly sat up and moved my limbs. When Jade and Ruby came to help, our four eyes met and finally we couldn't help bursting into laughter. The whole palace filled with joyful atmosphere. Watching the Emperor and Sophia suffer was truly one of life's great pleasures. I laughed while thinking. Since then, the entire palace remained lifeless. The spring festival was cold and cheerless. Though I stayed in my palace all day, I still accidentally caught a cold. Perhaps after the Emperor's visit, someone leaked news of my grave illness, making the benevolent Peace Palace unable to sit still. In February, the Empress Dowager personally came to visit me. Unfortunately, at that time I truly did look weak and sickly. Your Majesty the Empress Dowager, why have you come? I should be going to pay my respects to you. This doesn't follow protocol. I was startled and quickly tried to get up from bed. Sit down, child. Always so stubborn. How did you let yourself get like this? The Empress Dowager looked full of sympathy, pressing me to sit down. We both fell silent, looking at each other for a long while, no one speaking. To be honest, I did feel some resentment toward the Empress Dowager. From childhood I grew up beside the Grand Empress Dowager, but because the Grand Empress Dowager was elderly and couldn't personally teach many things, it was the Empress Dowager, then still Empress, who personally managed things. So I was raised under the Empress Dowager's watch, and our feelings weren't shallow. When I first became Crown Princess and feared making mistakes, it was also the Empress Dowager who secretly guided me. I knew she was satisfied with me. But when her son insisted on making a concubine empress, I didn't see her react strongly. In our dynasty that greatly values filial piety, if the Empress Dowager had firmly disagreed with making Sophia empress, His Majesty couldn't have done anything. But the Empress Dowager had her own difficulties. Alexander wasn't her biological son but born to a palace maid, only raised under the Empress Dowager at age 7. So Alexander's status as legitimate son wasn't entirely orthodox. The late emperor had hesitated a long time before naming him crown prince. The direct reason the late emperor decided was because my father firmly supported it. I still remember clearly when father entered the palace, he told me, "Victoria, don't concern yourself with other matters in this world. Only the propriety between legitimate and secondary cannot be abandoned. The respected consort's eldest son absolutely cannot be made crown prince. If legitimate and secondary are confused, then status isn't proper. When the ruler isn't proper, the dynasty will be endangered." I nodded blankly, my heart only thinking of the evening Alexander had secretly taken me out to see the lake on that flower-filled night when we were betrothed. From childhood I knew, we Sterlings were loyal subjects serving the emperor for generations. Father and eldest brother had already died on the battlefield. Second brother currently served as chief secretary, while third brother still guarded the frontier. Even fourth brother, though not outstanding, worked diligently in the Ministry of War. I was the Sterling family's only daughter. My life was predestined from birth to serve the inner court. Even when I entered the palace at 8 as the future crown princess, the crown prince hadn't been designated yet. I chose Alexander not because he was the legitimate son, but because I once naively thought childhood sweetheart feelings were worth entrusting my whole life to. Alexander and I weren't far apart in age. When I entered the palace, he had just been acknowledged by the Empress Dowager as her son. When I struggled learning palace rules and feminine accomplishments, he was also racking his brains studying the 4 books and 5 classics. Our time meeting in the Grand Empress Dowager's palace were our happiest moments. We complained together about our strict teachers and palace rules. The adults turned a blind eye for their own calculations. At that time, we were each other's best friends. But I didn't know when he developed thoughts of using me to fight for the throne. He told me Father Emperor didn't like him and made things difficult everywhere. I believed him. He said his elder brother, though accomplished in both literature and martial arts and loved by the emperor, was actually evil-hearted and always wanted to eliminate him. I believed that too. I used my own methods to help him build power, trying to speak well of him before the late emperor. Looking back now, the late emperor disliked Alexander probably simply because he was both ugly and stupid. I was happy becoming his crown princess, but he worried my family's clan would disadvantage him. He didn't know father and my brothers supported him not because I chose him, but because the imperial family had chosen him. He always feared the Sterling family would change sides and pull him down. Only those with evil hearts maliciously speculate about others this way. I married him for 1 year then became pregnant, but a newly entered beauty killed my child with just 1 bowl of medicine. Then that beauty was diagnosed as pregnant. He told me that was the woman he'd loved for a long time, and he wouldn't let her suffer any grievance. At that time, my father and brothers had just died on the battlefield, their bodies not yet cold, while he joyfully waited with Sophia for their coming child. Now he even wanted to seize my position as legitimate wife. What are you thinking about? The Empress Dowager patted my hand gently, interrupting my thoughts. I startled, realizing I'd shown resentment on my face without noticing, and quickly composed myself. Your child was just thinking about my illness. Come now, who are you trying to fool? I watched you grow up. Do you still want to hide from anyone? The Empress Dowager sighed. I know you resent them, don't you? I said nothing. If it were me, I'd resent them too. The Empress Dowager spoke frankly. You think I had it smooth. The late emperor was always cold to me, only loving respected consort, graceful consort, pleasant consort, never looking at me even once. After all, I suffered even more than you. I bore a legitimate son but couldn't raise him. The Empress Dowager paused, clear pain showing between her brows. Establish the legitimate, establish the eldest. Without a legitimate son would have been fine, but even when I acknowledged the emperor as my son, the late emperor would rather make respected consort's son crown prince than mine. Wasn't that a slap in my face? Then why didn't you? I asked softly. Resent. I didn't have the standing to resent. The Empress Dowager looked at a corner where golden swallows were carved on the wall. I wasn't even your equal. At least you had the Sterling family backing you. What could I resent? Not only couldn't I resent or complain, I had to exhaust myself pleasing the late emperor and teaching the imperial sons. Not being favored meant even a small mistake could destroy me forever. You're much better than me. His Majesty still has some feelings for you. The Empress Dowager patted my hand. Feelings. I couldn't help but laugh coldly. The Empress Dowager indeed had some feelings for me, but I feared those feelings weren't worth the calculations. Back then, how could she not recognize what kind of feelings Alexander had for me? Yet she still wholeheartedly supported our match, just to borrow strength to establish her son as heir. I understood all this, but at this point, why say these entangled words? Just afraid I'd bear resentment and disrupt the harem. But my background was too significant to move easily, so she performed this play of affection to win me over. If I weren't Victoria but Lillian Sterling or Lucy Sterling, I feared before the emperor ascended the throne, he would have given me a cup of poisoned wine. I gently withdrew my hand. The Empress Dowager is right. It's just that your child's health is poor. I hope you won't stay long to avoid harming your health. won't even call me mother anymore. The Empress Dowager showed no anger, only sympathy. I know what you're thinking, child. I just wanted to tell you one sincere thing. I truly love you. She sighed again. I know you resent me for not keeping the Empress position for you. But you know how His Majesty treats me. It's truly chilling. If I pushed too hard, I fear by now he wouldn't even have me, his Empress mother, in his eyes anymore. Even now, how much can I interfere in palace matters? It's just a benevolent peace palace to show filial piety. The Empress Dowager suddenly grew serious. Victoria, you absolutely cannot sink into hatred. This palace is in chaos. I know you're happily watching from the sidelines, but don't forget you're still part of this harem. Not to mention you have brothers behind you. If this palace continues in chaos, who knows what will happen? Don't wait until nothing can be saved to regret it. Victoria, you've always been clever and shrewd. You must understand. She patted me again. I sense a great calamity approaching. Victoria, His Majesty is foolish and the Empress is like mud that can't stick to walls. In this palace, along with the princes, I fear we can only rely on you. Enough, child. Think carefully. The Empress Dowager finished speaking and rose to leave, leaving me alone in silent contemplation. After a while, Ruby gently entered. Your Highness. I looked up, my expression complex. Ruby, for the first time, I don't know what to do. In the following days, everything proceeded normally. I closed my doors, focusing only on recuperation. There was no further news from the Empress Dowager. The Emperor and Empress still argued noisily. Alexander never came to see me again. On the first day of March, with beautiful sunny weather, I had just ordered someone to move a reclining chair outside to sun myself when I suddenly rushed in frantically. Your Highness, Your Highness. Something terrible has happened. The third prince, something's happened to the third prince. I panicked and quickly grabbed her hand. What happened to Marcus? Speak clearly. Jade was so worried she was near tears. It's benevolent peace palace, they don't know what was given. But the three princes suddenly got poisoned. The third prince is the worst, he's almost not going to make it. I immediately fell into confusion and quickly called for people to prepare a sedan chair to go to benevolent peace palace. Hurry. No one is allowed to leave. Suddenly a large group of people entered from outside the palace, led by a eunuch who walked straight to me. This servant follows His Majesty's oral decree. Noble consort Victoria is suspected of plotting to harm the princes. By special order, the entire palace is sealed. All related persons are absolutely forbidden from entering or leaving. Violators will be beaten to death by imperial command. I stared at them in shock as they tightly closed my palace doors. All servants were driven into side halls. I only saw that eunuch's emotionless face as he bowed to me. Noble consort, you are currently under suspicion. Please wait patiently here. As for what happens, we can only wait for His Majesty to decide. He bowed. This servant takes his leave. Then came Alexander. A hard slap made me stagger. You won't even spare my own child. How vicious. I was completely bewildered, my heart only thinking of Marcus. The Emperor's anger and my own safety couldn't concern me. Marcus. How is Marcus? I want to see him. You still have the face to see Marcus. Alexander slapped me again, making me fall. By my decree, noble consort Victoria is vicious and cruel, stripped of consort rank, confined to the cold palace. He pointed at me, red-faced with anger. If anything happens to Marcus, I'll tear you into 1,000 pieces. This slap woke me up. All the injustices from the Emperor, all the grievances I'd endured, all the anger suppressed in my heart suddenly exploded. I pointed straight at the Emperor and shouted, Alexander Crown, you can kill me anytime, but casually convicting me now only helps the real culprit. What basis do you have to say I harmed the princes? Alexander was both shocked and furious. The poisoner has already confessed you directed them. What more do you want to argue? He ordered those beside him, still not arresting this vicious woman. Let's see who dares. I shouted, frightening everyone around. Alexander Crown, has lard blinded your eyes? I've always treated Marcus as my own son. Has he suffered any grievance? You blindly killing me only makes the real culprit happy. As Emperor, You only have this much vision. I'm truly ashamed of you. Without caring about his purple-faced fury, I pointed straight ahead and commanded, led the way to Benevolent Peace Palace. As soon as I entered the inner hall, I saw Sophia rushing at me like a madwoman, clawing and scratching. Why did you poison my Marcus? I want your life. Get lost. I pushed her away forcefully without ceremony. Me harm Marcus. Sophia, do you have a brain? I directly asked the physician. How is the third prince? The head physician broke out in cold sweat. Your Highness is severely poisoned. This minister has done his best, but I fear without the antidote. Speak plainly, I urged anxiously. This poison is too strong. Without a specific antidote, it cannot be cured. But this minister hasn't diagnosed what poison it is, so cannot prepare an antidote. Currently His Highness is only sustained by old ginseng. Without an antidote, I fear he only has 2 days at most. Heaven on the other side, Sophia hearing this wailed and rushed straight at me. Vicious woman. Speak. Quickly. Smack. I slapped her, knocking her over, then commanded loudly. The Empress has gone mad. Drag her down and guard her. Before the third prince wakes, she's forbidden from approaching the inner hall. Seeing the Empress's palace servants wanting to protect their mistress, I added, the Empress's palace people must also be closely supervised, no causing chaos. The Sterling family was originally a military clan. Though small, I'd been trained somewhat by my father and brothers. My slap nearly knocked Sophia unconscious. Seeing them dragged away, I quickly went to Marcus's bedside. I saw Marcus, usually so healthy, now pale, faced with ice-cold limbs. My heart aches like being cut. I hatefully asked Ruby, where is the poisoner now? Already taken to the Ministry of Justice. It's the deputy chief of the Imperial Kitchen, Ruby said. Your Highness, can we go interrogate? Go. Let's see if I don't pry her open. I ground my teeth, then suddenly thought of something and instructed Jade to investigate that person's background. I'm afraid it's not simply someone from the palace. When I led people to the Ministry of Justice, that palace maid had already been tortured, waiting for my interrogation. Sadly laughable, at this time, most in the palace had received the decree stripping me of rank, but no one dared oppose my orders. Perhaps they were also intimidated by the line of palace servants holding clubs before me. Kill gods who block, kill Buddhas who block. This was Victoria's style. I ask you, who directed you? I barely controlled my anger to ask. Wasn't it you, Your Highness? That palace maid glared, even with mockery. I quickly stepped forward and kicked, making her roll away. Shocked cries rang out around us. Who directed you? I grabbed her chin and asked. That palace maid was clearly frightened, but still wouldn't open her mouth. It was noble consort Victoria who directed me. I slapped her face hard 4 or 5 more times, then 2 punches straight to her eyes. Not letting her catch her breath, I continuously punched her nose until she cried and screamed. I grabbed her hair and continued asking who directed her. She was so frightened she trembled, only knowing to cry continuously. Fist again, she quickly screamed. Not Lady Victoria. Not Lady Victoria, it was my own idea. No one directed me. I angrily was about to hit more when Jade stepped forward to pull me away. Your Highness, calm your anger. For someone like this, it's not worth it. She leaned to my ear and whispered a few sentences. I listened and laughed coldly. Lady Abigail, right? You're from Lotus Terrace. At home you have parents, brothers, sisters-in-law, and 2 unmarried younger sisters, and 3 young nephews. Seeing her fragilely show fear, I continued. Do you really think whoever directed you will give you and your family wealth? I'm afraid they'll kill them all to avoid His Majesty and Her Majesty's interrogation. Even me. You think how long it would take me to capture your whole family into the palace? She immediately went pale, thought for a long while, then finally broke down crying. It's Lady Isabella. She promised to give me 1,000 taels of gold. I was momentarily blinded by greed and agreed, but she only said it was medicine to give the prince's diarrhea. I didn't know it was so poisonous. Your Highness, I absolutely had no intention to harm anyone, she cried while kowtowing. But I was already grinding my teeth in anger and immediately ordered the Ministry of Justice. You heard clearly, right? Still not arresting Lady Isabella and bringing her here. When I brought Isabella back to Benevolent Peace Palace, Alexander was already there. Seeing me, he said angrily, "Who allowed you to imprison the Empress? Where did you get such courage?" I coldly replied, "I only dare imprison an Empress. But your Majesty's beloved concubine dares poison even princes." I showed no courtesy, signaling the guards to throw her down. "Speak, why did you poison the princes?" Isabella cried, tears like rain. "Your Majesty, please seek justice for me. Noble consort Victoria forced that servant to falsely accuse me." Alexander indeed got angry. "Victoria." I laughed coldly, not letting him finish. "No wonder you're a muddle-headed ruler. Just because your beloved concubine says a few words, you believe immediately without examining evidence, only knowing to follow your own will." I lowered my head, grabbed Isabella's chin, and said coldly, "You're from a branch of the Fox family in Riverside. You grew up in Prince Changsha's fief since childhood. Despite your status as a noble family's daughter, you frequently entered and left the prince's mansion, having already pledged yourself to Prince Changsha. But unfortunately, your dream lover asked you to serve his younger brother, the current emperor, while killing all the princes in the palace, to clear the way for Prince Changsha to usurp the throne. Am I right?" Without waiting for Isabella's reply, I leaned close to her ear and said softly, "You have a younger brother, currently only 3 years old, the only male heir of the Fox family branch. Guess if he's in my hands, or do you think your lover is more important than your family's bloodline?" Her eyes suddenly widened, then her whole body collapsed. "Yes, I confess. I poisoned them and framed noble consort Victoria." Alexander was clearly shocked, showing pain. "Why her? Isabella, you're so kind. How could you?" Sophia was also shocked but quickly remembered the most important thing. "Where's the antidote? Bring it out quickly." Isabella stared at me as if wanting to exchange for a definite promise. I smiled and whispered, "If Marcus doesn't die, your brother won't die either." She gritted her teeth as if determined. "The antidote is with Prince Changsha. He also gave me this poison." She looked at me with a devastatingly beautiful smile. "Noble consort Victoria's methods are truly brilliant. If you were Empress, perhaps I wouldn't dare act so casually. You must keep your word. Otherwise, even as a ghost I won't spare you." Having said that, she suddenly broke free from the servant's hands and rammed her head into the hall's pillar. Blood flowed everywhere. Everyone screamed in shock. I walked close, seeing Isabella already gasping for breath, and said gently, "Sister, you guessed wrong. No matter how capable I am, I couldn't capture your brother in Riverside. I just happened to know you had a brother." Your eyes opened wide, but just a moment later she stopped breathing. Alexander angrily pounded the table. "Immediately arrest Prince Changsha." I looked at him and asked, "Does your Majesty want my help?" Alexander looked at me resentfully but finally gave in. "Since you're so good at interrogation, I'll leave it to you." Having said that, he angrily left Benevolent Peace Palace. By the 4th watch, Prince Changsha had been arrested and brought to the palace. They say he killed 3 horses on the way. At the Ministry of Justice, I smiled and described in detail how Isabella had rammed her head into the pillar, adding fuel to the fire while he was angry. Failed to compete for the throne years ago, now using such despicable means, thinking you could sit on the dragon throne. Have you not thought of respected consort? She's the Empress Dowager's enemy. When you become a rebel, how long do you think she'll live? Prince Changsha looked at me with eyes that wanted to devour me. But soon he laughed loudly and said to me, "What does our mother and son's life or death have to do with you? Your beloved killed your children, demoted you from wife to concubine. That feeling isn't pleasant at all, is it? Watching your rival bear and raise children while you've lost all affection. Victoria, even if you save Marcus, so what? He's not your son. When he sits on the throne, who will be Empress Dowager? If I were Sophia, by then just one edict would be enough to make you die in burial." "Ah no, not certain. You probably won't live to see Alexander pass away." "What do you think?" The smile on my face suddenly died. Whether I live to see His Majesty pass away, who knows? But you certainly won't live to see tomorrow. Just then Ruby hurriedly ran in to report. Your Highness, the antidote has been found. In Prince Changsha's mansion's secret chamber. You searched my brother's mansion. Prince Changsha jumped up in shock. My secret chamber, how could you find it? His Majesty sent people. I smiled gently. People you brought. In your mansion, just use heavy torture and someone will confess. What's so difficult? By the way, you planned to use poison to kill the 3 princes, but the first prince and 4th prince weren't poisoned. Even if the 3rd prince died, you'd have nothing to do with the throne. I stood up. His Majesty must be on his way to supervise your execution. If I were you, I'd burn incense for your mother consort first. Prince Changsha was executed that very day along with respected consort. As for me, I stayed in benevolent Peace Palace beside Marcus for a whole night, finally waiting for him to wake up. When Marcus opened his eyes and saw me, he called out, Mother. I didn't correct him, just walked over to pull up his blanket. Rest well for a few more days and you'll recover, understand? I walked to the outer hall. Clearly the Emperor and Empress had just argued, both had their backs turned, not speaking. I didn't bother with them, just walked out on my own. But I heard Alexander shout loudly, Stop! Victoria, your health has recovered, hasn't it? Crimes of deceiving the sovereign, crimes of disrespect, you think you can just leave? Just leave. I turned back to look at him with half an eye. Your Majesty is really something. You almost let your beloved concubine kill your own son. I should ask, if that day you had banished me to the cold palace, would it be your brother or your son who died? Alexander was angry but knew he was in the wrong, so after a long while he said, But you still can't be disrespectful to me and the Empress like that. You should still be punished. Or not. I laughed. This the wicked complaining first. You almost let my child be poisoned to death. I haven't settled accounts with you yet, and you have what right to convict me? Your child. The Empress, who hadn't spoken until now, suddenly spoke up. That's my child. I carried him for 10 months through pregnancy and pain to give birth. Why do you dare say he's your child? These last words she almost screamed. What? My anger suddenly exploded to the extreme. I screamed back, Your child? What face do you have to say he's your child? You tell me yourself. Marcus grew up in my hands for 8 whole years. I couldn't bear even a small headache or tiny scratch on him. You dare say otherwise. Now with you, his birth mother, in just 1 year he almost lost his life. And Edward, William, I haven't settled accounts with you yet. 2 children almost constantly sick. How are you being a mother? What face do you have to say they're your children? Edward and William weren't born to me. Sophia calmly replied. I was so angry I nearly lost my reason. With one kick I sent the chess table before me flying. Marcus wasn't born to me either, but did he suffer any grievance in my hands? Marcus is my child. Edward, William, and the other little ones are all my children. You treat my children poorly, I'll overthrow you. Victoria. Alexander shouted loudly. How can you speak to the Empress like this? This is the Empress. Just this. I laughed angrily. Your Majesty tells me to respect the Empress. You respect the Empress yourself first. Everyone in and out of the palace knows you like arguing with the Empress. Really? I dragged out my voice. Such a harmonious couple. Sophia seemed stunned by my scolding, her eyes vacant, staring straight ahead. Alexander was so angry he couldn't speak. I laughed coldly and walked out of the palace. The next day, I heard the Emperor was again called by the Empress Dowager. It was said that when Marcus had his incident, the Empress Dowager also wanted to rush over, but fainted from worry on the spot. By the time she woke, Prince Changsha had already been captured. She immediately executed respected consort. The Emperor returned with a gloomy face. That very day he issued an edict promoting me to Imperial Noble Consort, in charge of raising the princes. Receiving the imperial edict, I immediately left that small abandoned palace and moved straight into benevolent Peace Palace. After Marcus's incident, I wanted to watch over the children day and night to prevent further incidents. The Empress had been ill for 2 months. The other day Lady Lily came to attend her illness, saying she'd lost a whole circle of weight. Now the palace's power had returned to my hands. Though I was only imperial noble consort, who in the palace dared not treat me as mistress of the harem. The royal consort hugged William and smiled at me, looking satisfied. I smiled too. After taking control of palace power, the first thing I did was restore the system of birth mothers seeing their children once every 3 days, and secretly told them they didn't need to wait 3 days. Whenever they missed their children, just come. 6 children. I still had to manage affairs and couldn't watch them all. Having birth mothers frequently see their children was still better than me, an adoptive mother. I smiled, saying as I stroked William's little head, "What a blessed child." When poison was put in the prince's daily milk, William only ate a little before vomiting. Edward somehow didn't eat at all. Isn't that fortune within misfortune? The royal consort smiled. At that time William had intestinal problems and vomited whatever he ate. Edward was cold because his padded clothes were cut, so he didn't feel like eating. Who knew these 2 children would escape death because of this? The royal consort smiled mockingly. Should we thank her? I smiled without answering, just lowering my head to check Phoenix Palace's account books. This month's expenses, minus medicine, only have just over 200 tals of silver left. This doesn't match her character. I think she's lost hope. The royal consort smiled lightly. I heard because of the 3rd prince incident. She and the emperor had a huge argument. What man would like such a crazy woman? Moreover, now she's exhausted in both mind and strength, beauty faded and feelings worn. The royal consort put William down and whispered to me, "I think your good days are coming, sister. Even if she doesn't die, this whole harem belongs to you. If she dies, wouldn't you rightfully become empress? No matter how stupid the emperor is, he can't be muddled about this." "He's been muddled quite a few times already," I replied indifferently, thinking of Alexander establishing the empress and feeling nauseous. I sighed. Though Sophia is hateful, her crime doesn't deserve death. We just need to live well each day. Let the emperor think whatever he wants. This entire summer I was busy reorganizing palace rules. The old people from the Eastern Palace, hearing I'd regained power, all rejoiced and competed to show loyalty. As for those newly entered who'd been spoiled and developed bad habits, before long I disciplined them all into obedience. The Empress Dowager was also very satisfied, often keeping me in Benevolent Peace Palace for conversation to support me. Even the Emperor, following the Empress Dowager's orders, visited Benevolent Peace Palace to see me. "Victoria, that day was my fault with you. Your Majesty, please leave. I really cannot serve you anymore." I held William while embracing the 3rd princess, glaring at Alexander. "Victoria." This time Alexander knew he was wrong and didn't dare get angry. "At that time the evidence really did point to you. I didn't act arbitrarily. Evidence says what it says. Don't you know how to think?" I rolled my eyes. "I order the children be taken outside. This matter, saying you didn't do it intentionally, I don't believe. Just thinking a little reveal the problem." "Very well. You and the Empress both point fingers at me. You truly are a matched pair. Go back. I'm really afraid if you stay here overnight you'll be poisoned again. Then say I poisoned you. My lowly life can't bear it. Victoria." Alexander finally couldn't bear it anymore, his face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm showing you consideration, yet you keep pushing further. Though I wronged you, look at your defiant attitude those days. What part of it resembles a consort? This crime of disrespect has returned again, returned again. Disrespect, disrespect, disrespect. I spoke without courtesy. I saved your son's life and conveniently eliminated 2 rebels. You don't thank me but want to convict me. Truly killing the donkey after it's done grinding. Once the deed is done, that's it. I won't argue anymore." I directly ordered the servants, "His Majesty is tired. Attend His Majesty to find the Empress or Lady Lily or any noble lady or beauty to rest." "You." He was shocked that I gave him no face. About to speak more, I cut him off. "Doesn't your Majesty hear? I cannot serve you. Aren't I making it clear? I cannot serve you, cannot serve you." Or does your majesty insist on clinging here? Alexander finally exploded in anger. Very good. The Sterling family's daughter is indeed so virtuous and moral. Still pretending not to understand. I laughed self-mockingly. Virtuous and moral. When I first married you, wasn't I virtuous and moral enough? How did you repay my virtue and morality? I laughed coldly. From now on, I have nothing to do with those 4 words virtuous and moral. If you want virtue and morality, go find the Empress. Alexander's anger suddenly dissipated. He stood still without moving. After a long while, I was about to speak more to drive him away when I heard him whisper, I remember when you first entered the Eastern Palace, how understanding you were. At that time I had just been made crown prince, everything in the mansion was orderly, and you were sensible. So I brought this on myself, you just rest. He led his people away, his figure seeming somewhat haggard. I felt strange and turned to ask Ruby, what's wrong with His Majesty? Is something happening at court? Ruby lowered her voice to reply, I just heard General Victor Sterling has returned to the capital. Really? I was overjoyed beyond measure. General Victor Sterling was now my 3rd brother, Victor Sterling. Since father and eldest brother died in battle, he had been guarding the northern border, never returning to the capital. As he returned to the Sterling mansion, how long will he stay this time? Ruby shook her head. I don't know, but I heard His Majesty summon General Sterling back, because the Northwest war situation is very tense and needs him at the front lines. But General Sterling handed over his military seal at court, saying that teaching his sister poorly, being despised by His Majesty, he wasn't worthy of being a great general and requested to resign and return home. They say this caused His Majesty great embarrassment. That's not all. Jade ran in to continue. At that time, the chief secretary also stood up to scold the general, then memorialized that having such a sister, he also wasn't worthy of being chief secretary, and requested to resign and return home. His Majesty was flustered, continuously consoling them, even saying Your Highness would certainly be made Empress, just that your health was poor so you voluntarily gave it up. Then what? I excitedly asked. Then the general said that Imperial Noble Consort's current poor health. Before marriage, Imperial Noble Consort never had illnesses every 3 or 5 days like this. Now being like this, it must be heaven not acknowledging the Empress's fate, punishing with retribution. The general no longer had face to be a great general. Best if the emperor deposed the Imperial Noble Consort and sent them away from the capital to avoid displeasing the Sterling family ancestors. His Majesty was confused, speaking incoherently, hurriedly saying Imperial Noble Consort had recovered, heaven's punishment was baseless. In the end, the general unceremoniously said Imperial Noble Consort recovered but the Empress wasn't well. Would the Empress give up her position? His Majesty was dumbfounded, not knowing how to answer. Then at the end of court he came straight here. I laughed continuously. My 3rd brother had always spoken without restraint. I feared now even the entire Chen clan had no place to hide. My power grew stronger day by day, while the Empress's side gradually weakened. By autumn, I heard the Empress's illness had worsened with no signs of improvement. Though Alexander frequently visited, they reportedly argued violently each time, always ending with His Majesty leaving in anger, and the Empress hurriedly summoning physicians. We didn't interfere, however much medicine Phoenix Palace used. Whatever items they needed, let them handle it. The rest didn't concern us. By winter, I heard the Empress's health grew worse each day. One day while I was checking Marcus's homework, someone came to report, Your Highness, Phoenix Palace has summoned you. I frowned. Have we left her lacking anything these days? No. Seeing Ruby and Jade also shaking their heads in confusion, I grew more puzzled. Then what else is there for her and me to discuss? Suddenly I saw a palace made from Phoenix Palace kneel before me. Your Highness, I beg you to go immediately. Her Majesty the Empress fears her body won't last. She only hopes to speak a few words with you. Though Her Majesty the Empress has always opposed you, she truly harbors no ill will. I beg you to go. I truly believed Sophia harbored no ill will. But ignorant people sitting high up were the real disaster. I sighed inwardly, then said, if that's so, I'll go see. After all, this illness came from my scolding. Though she brought it on herself, still. I slowly walked into Phoenix Palace. When the Empress Dowager lived here, I frequently came to pay respects. The Empress Dowager once pulled my hand, meticulously pointing at each item in the palace. Ladder, all this will be yours. Don't lose anything. Though I don't live here now, all the arrangements remain as familiar as before. When I entered the inner hall, a hoarse voice rang out, finally you've come. I was startled. Sophia's voice had always been clear and melodious, especially loved by His Majesty. But now, Ooze lying on the bed. The beauty who once captivated Alexander was now skinny as bones, her face clearly aged, though compared to the royal consort who was 3 years older and had borne 2 children, she looked much older. I was so shocked I forgot our past grievances. What illness do you have that in just half a year you've withered to this extent? Sophia smiled bitterly, a tear rolling from her eye. What illness? Heart sickness. She waved, calling me over. Why stand so far? I'm about to die, I can't harm you. I sat on the small chair by the bed. She didn't know what to say. After a while she finally spoke. My body probably won't last past this year. Then His Majesty will definitely make you Empress. 10 years have passed, and I still couldn't win against you. I frowned. At this point, you're still thinking about that. I never intended to compete with you. I don't wish for your death now either. I looked at her for a while, then said gently, so now you see being Empress isn't comfortable at all, right? Sophia laughed again, her laughter full of bitterness. Not at all comfortable, not comfortable at all. Victoria, what do you think I wanted to be Empress for? Power? Wealth? No, I just wanted to be his legitimate wife, to be the only one who could stand beside him under heaven. But him? How did he treat me? Her tears flowed freely. Such a foolish emperor, yet you chose him. I forcefully suppressed this sentence in my heart. Sophia turned to look at me and suddenly said, you think because you were childhood sweethearts with him, he loved you most. Before the grand wedding, he met me on the street during the Lantern Festival. My hair was messed by the wind. He personally fixed it for me. He swore he'd take me as his wife. But then he turned and married you, the person he hated most. I wasn't willing to accept it. Why? Why could you, a sterling daughter, enjoy everything from him? Though I was of low birth, I was the one he loved most. I was his legitimate wife. I quietly watched her in her fury. When she panted from exhaustion, I gently said, so now you see being the one he loves most isn't comfortable either, right? Finally she burst into tears. But since I became Empress, everything changed. Palace affairs are numerous and complex. He never understood me. The Empress Dowager always made things difficult. Other consorts kept opposing me, and there were new people. From our wedding, he promised me he'd only have me be with me for life. In the Eastern Palace, he already had all of you, bearing children one after another. I endured it all. But why, after becoming emperor, did he still need to take new consorts? Why? Why is it like this? You believed such nonsense. I was surprised at her naivety. Not even discussing your deep feelings, but as emperor, he must have 3 palaces and 6 courtyards to continue the imperial line. Don't you understand? Don't you remember that spring incident? If Prince Changsha had succeeded, all 3 princes would have been harmed. Could you bear 3 more princes? Even if you'd continuously bear children, how could you ensure they'd all survive to adulthood? 1 person for life is just a nice story among common folk. Look through history, how many imperial couples had 1 person for life? What was their ending? Sophia choked up, clearly having never thought of this. After a while, she smiled sadly. About Marcus being poisoned, I truly admire you. You were right, I don't deserve to be a mother. Without your help, Marcus would have died long ago. I truly don't deserve to raise Marcus. But the child's father, what kind of person is the child's father? That slut Isabella already confessed. Yet he still didn't believe it. If not for your talent making him personally interrogate her, she would have escaped early. I said nothing. That she could understand this wasn't easy. Seeing her struggle to sit up, Victoria, I'm about to die. I entrust Marcus to you. I beg you, don't neglect him because I'm his birth mother. After I die, you can freely acknowledge him as your son. I'm truly a useless mother. I beg you, you must protect him to grow up safely. Having said this, she wanted to kowtow to me. I hurriedly caught her. Sophia's strength was already exhausted. This kowtow could make her fall to the ground and die immediately. At that time, if people said I murdered the Empress, how could I clear myself? No need for you to say, I've long treated Marcus as my own son. Marcus is a good child. I naturally love him. I know. For the first time, Sophia showed a genuine smile. I used to hate you, thinking you stole my position, but now I understand you're truly a good person. She seemed to suddenly remember something, hurriedly grabbing my hand. Victoria, I never harmed you. I hated you, that's true, but that bowl of medicine years ago really wasn't my doing. Alexander told me to give it to you, so I did. I didn't know what it was. I never thought of harming your child. I swear to heaven, she made to swear. I quickly stopped her. I've known this for a long time. Sophia was foolish and ignorant, not kind but also not vicious. The truly vicious one now sat in the Cheongqing Palace. And your illness wasn't caused by me either. The whole palace says I wanted to seize your position and drugged you. I didn't. I never wanted to kill anyone. She clung to me, continuing to speak. I quickly stopped her. You know, if you get too agitated and die in my arms, I'll be in big trouble. Old aunt, it was hard waiting for you to calm down. She and I looked at each other without speaking. Finally I spoke first. If that day I had been Empress and you noble consort, perhaps you would have lived very well. The Empress is mother of the empire, mother of all under heaven. It was never just about deep feelings with the emperor. Now your illness, you argued with him because he wanted to depose you, right? Sophia smiled bitterly. Nothing escapes your notice. Yes, he wanted to depose me, even said I'd always been considerate so I'd surely understand. What nonsense. He failed as emperor, lost the court officials' hearts, and wanted me to bear it. I said I'm about to die, can't he wait a few more months? He said the court officials wanted to see his attitude. Only deposing me would appease their anger. It was he who established me in the first place. I'm afraid he doesn't just want to depose me but grant me death too. By the end, her face was covered in tears. I watched her silently, then after a while said, at this point, why don't you voluntarily request deposition? He can't grant you death. You can still keep some reputation among the court officials. Then Marcus's status would look better too. She shook her head. I've long been seen as an evil empress. What do I care about reputation anymore? As for Marcus, I've already thought it through. You have no children, just let the Jade Register record your name. Impossible. I shook my head repeatedly. You know Alexander gave you medicine to make me miscarry, so you know he can't let me have children. Now Marcus is the most supported for crown prince position. Even having a palace maid as his birth mother is better than me, a sterling daughter. I smiled bitterly. You think my becoming empress is winning. I've long not wanted to be this empress anymore. Thinking of him already disgusts me. For once, Sophia agreed with me on something. But she grabbed my hand saying, for the children, I beg you to continue as empress. In December, after just over a year as empress, Lady Chen was deposed. Despite Alexander's strong objections, I still held a grand funeral for her. Not for anything else, just to make him uncomfortable. Moreover, there was the matter of Marcus's birth mother. When Alexander angrily came to find me, I just looked at him coldly. Your lover of many years is dead. Don't you feel any regret? He paused, then said. Her fortune was thin. What's there to regret? I laughed coldly. Arguing to the point of endangering lives, you expect me to believe that? Alexander Crown, for personal gain you poisoned your wife. I've truly underestimated you. His face immediately turned liver-colored. Victoria, don't speak carelessly. You think I don't dare depose you? You truly don't dare. I smiled faintly. Deposing an empress is a matter of lost virtue. You've deposed 2 empresses in succession. See what the world will say about you, this sovereign and father. Alexander was so angry he couldn't speak, looking at me with eyes full of hatred. I'm just temporarily tense about the Western Front war situation, needing help from your sterling family. Wait until the Northwest chaos is pacified, you'll see how I deal with you. Fine, I'll wait, I mocked. After pacifying the Northwest, there's still the Northern barbarians and Southern tribes. What ability do you have to think you don't need our sterling family? Unless you have talent like the founding emperor who could conquer the world from horseback. But if it were the founding emperor handling this Northwest matter, it certainly wouldn't drag on for 2 years. So what nonsense are you speaking? Alexander stamped his foot in anger. Good, just made Empress and already daring to oppose me. Looks like your sterling family plans to rebel. The sterling family has always been loyal, doesn't your majesty know? I smiled mockingly. It's just that your majesty treating your official's sister this way, how can it not dishearten my brothers? Don't you truly understand? I sat down firmly beside the bed. Please leave, your majesty, I wish to rest. Alexander left in a fury. Ruby worriedly approached, saying, Your Highness, isn't this too blatant? No matter. Let him realize his position early. I truly didn't want to waste effort pretending with him anymore. I instructed, let's rest early. Tomorrow we still need to receive the official wives. Maybe I can even see my brothers. On New Year's Day, Alexander and I sat together receiving civil and military officials and their wives from court. The phoenix crown and robes together weighed dozens of jinn. Besides the solemn magnificence that enhanced the Empress's bearing, they were useless. Wearing detestable clothes and sitting beside someone I disliked, truly tasteless. Fortunately, after the congratulations ceremony ended, I could privately meet my family. After completing the ceremonies, I withdrew behind the screen in Phoenix Palace's main hall to wait. Not long after, I heard footsteps entering. I heard a low voice. Your servant Vincent Sterling pays respects to Her Majesty the Empress. Why be bound by these empty formalities? I smiled, ordering the screen removed. Second brother, how has your mansion been lately? Why didn't third brother come together? My second brother seemed somewhat unhappy. Your Majesty the Empress, removing the screen like this probably isn't appropriate. I didn't care. We used to meet like this in the Eastern Palace. Who dared say anything? The Eastern Palace can't compare to the palace. Moreover, you've just taken the Empress position. You should act more carefully. Your Highness, Your Highness, Your Highness. Second brother, have you really become so distant from your sister? I showed displeasure. The palace court is already sufficiently uncomfortable. Must families still maintain formalities? Victoria's temper is still the same as always. Second brother sighed helplessly. Sister's temperament is still unchanged. Previously, when His Majesty insisted on not establishing you as Empress, wasn't that lesson enough? The palace court isn't the Sterling mansion. Though His Majesty is your husband, he's also the sovereign. You must always follow his wishes. Brother didn't speak like this before. Suddenly a cheerful voice rang out. I saw a tall man stride in quickly, smiling brightly at me. Victoria. This guy previously wrote me a letter, every word full of fury, cursing that young emperor to the point of utter stupidity for daring to bully our Sterling family sister. It made me so angry I wanted to come to the capital to settle accounts with that crown fellow. Now he's praising the emperor. He clasped his hands in greeting to me. Your Majesty the Empress, is everything well? My eyes misted over. Third brother. These years in the north, had he been well? Now I was so choked up I couldn't speak anymore. Third brother was also somewhat moved. It's been 10 years. Victoria, you've grown into a young woman. I forced a smile. 10 years ago, wasn't I already a young woman? I was already married then. I looked at my two brothers, hundreds of emotions tangling in my heart. I could see second brother as chief secretary once or twice a year at least. But third brother had been guarding the frontier, and we hadn't met for a full 10 years. 10 years ago, when father and eldest brother suddenly died in battle at the frontier, second brother had just come of age, third brother was only in his teens, yet both had shouldered the Sterling family burden together. Now who still dared look down on the Sterling family for not having old General Sterling? How much hardship had second and third brother endured? It went without saying. Third brother, why did His Majesty suddenly recall you to the capital? Don't say you volunteered to return. I know His Majesty wants to send you to the Northwest Front. Is there some emergency that His Majesty must transfer troops defending the northern barbarians to the northwest? Third brother choked on his words, thinking for a while before slowly saying, Victoria, I'll tell you honestly, the northwest situation is currently very critical. I was about to ask more when I heard third brother curse. Those western barbarians are just remnants of their forefathers. During the late emperor's time, they were still worth noticing. How come in my time they never caused waves, but in His Majesty's time, 2 years and still not pacified? Instead growing more chaotic. A bunch of dead dogs. Wait until your sterling grandfather arrives to see how I handle them. Second brother quickly stopped him, then turned to me with a bitter smile. His Majesty's intention is probably to personally lead the expedition so third brother can protect him. I was shocked. It's come to the point of personal imperial expedition. Actually not like that. Second brother sighed. But the war situation is indeed not very optimistic. His Majesty probably wants to use this opportunity to establish great merit suppressing foreign tribes. Nonsense, I said angrily. He just wants to build achievements without caring that in the capital the crown prince isn't established. Chaos. Has His Majesty decided? Third brother said irritably. What else? Just lacking one memorial. It's not that. Third brother sighed. This matter just needs me to bring more troops to resolve. Yet still discussing the sovereign. How little discussion. Second brother glared at him. Third brother glanced back and fell silent. Then second brother looked at me. Victoria, if His Majesty is determined on personal expedition, in this palace I fear you'll have to serve as regent. I frowned. Though the princes are young, isn't there still the Empress Dowager? His Majesty has long hated you. I fear he won't want you as regent. His Majesty hates the Empress Dowager even more. Second brother lowered his voice. He's stubborn by nature, never trusting those who've helped him, whether the Empress Dowager, you, or even our sterling family. Moreover, the Empress Dowager didn't come from a noble family and has no political experience. If she serves as regent, I fear the court won't submit. Though His Majesty doesn't want to, you're still the only one who can manage court affairs. We discussed a few more matters. When court officials took their leave, I still felt reluctant to part. Suddenly second brother said, Victoria, I have something to discuss privately with you. Third brother potted unhappily then left. Second brother seriously asked me, Victoria, what do you think of the third prince? I thought for a moment then answered, Marcus is intelligent and steady, not like his birth mother's foolishness. Compared to Edward who's weak and William who's mischievous, Marcus is indeed the most outstanding child. Second brother nodded. I've heard His Majesty intends to establish the third prince as crown prince. Seems he's indeed worthy of trust. I widened my eyes. That's just because Marcus is Sophia's son. Now that Sophia is despised by him, I don't know if he still wants to establish Marcus. Second brother pondered for a while, then suddenly turned to look at me. The third prince is 8 years old this year, right? I nodded. He'll be 9 after February. Victoria, Vivian is also 8 and can be arranged to enter the palace. My heart stirred slightly. Vivian Sterling was second brother's eldest daughter. I hadn't seen her for years but often heard second brother mention her. Enter the palace. Why follow my path? Vivian is still young, no rush now. Not young anymore, second brother said. Victoria, all Sterling daughters must go through this path. Our grandmother, our aunt and you. Vivian must also fulfill her responsibility as a Sterling daughter. My heart turned cold. Each generation had one Sterling daughter enter the palace. My grandmother became empress and gave birth to the late emperor before suddenly passing away. My aunt, Consort Huai, after becoming the late emperor's favorite consort, only lived 2 more years. I never even met her. And me, an empress hated by the emperor, outwardly the victor but in reality. These days full of blade winds and sword shadows in this deep palace, these places that cannot see light, did Vivian deserve to walk this path again? But second brother looked at me intently. Victoria, sterling daughters are born to enter the palace. Right, that was the sentence I'd heard father repeat since childhood. Born to enter the palace, cannot escape, cannot avoid. I sighed. Second brother, arrange it. When the time comes, I'll just speak one sentence to His Majesty. Just after leaving the palace, Alexander issued the edict for personal imperial expedition. As expected, I was given responsibility for regency. On the 5th day of the 2nd month, His Majesty led the Grand Army with General Sterling away from the capital toward the northwest. I led the consorts in sending them off from behind. Throughout this time, Alexander never looked at me once. Life as regent wasn't as busy as I'd imagined. In the capital, my second brother held power, so no major incidents occurred. Each morning I sat in the Cheongqing Palace with the eunuchs holding brushes to approve memorials. Afternoons I returned to Benevolent Peace Palace to teach the princes and princesses. Of course, now there was one more person, my niece, Vivian. Vivian was exactly like me when I first entered the palace, proud, fond of wearing red clothes. I would teach her how to become a worthy empress, just like I am now. Without the emperor in the harem, it was peaceful as a still lake. The small beautiful consorts had no target to fight over, often gathering to eat melon seeds and play cards. When summer came, I even saw several noble ladies competing with grass in the imperial garden. Seeing me, they scattered in fear. I didn't bother pursuing it. After all, they were just young women in their teens or 20s, no need to sit still all day. If there was anything noteworthy, it was that Lady Lily was pregnant. This wasn't strange. After Isabella's death, Lily was most favored. Her having a child was just a matter of time. After receiving the news, I arranged for her prenatal care according to regulations. The other consorts also pretended to congratulate. Only the Empress Dowager was truly happy, even bringing Lily to live with her in Benevolent Peace Palace. Mother, this doesn't follow protocol, I advised. What protocol? The Empress Dowager replied impatiently. I have 6 grandchildren all in Benevolent Peace Palace. No one comes to keep me company. His Majesty isn't in the palace, can't this old bones find someone to chat with? It seemed the Empress Dowager wanted to personally raise Lily's child. I couldn't advise much more. After all, the Empress Dowager had suffered much bitterness over the years. When the late emperor was alive, he didn't want to look at her even once more. Now she'd finally escaped suffering, but her descendants were unfilial. What more could I do but follow her wishes? Besides, Lily staying in Benevolent Peace Palace saved me trouble. This year passed very quickly. Each month I received war reports from the northwest, all ordinary news or small victories. By November, I received a letter from third brother. Through the letter, I could see he was somewhat worried, saying the northwest situation was more serious than expected. The northern enemies had allied with the western barbarians, truly difficult to handle. Worse, His Majesty often didn't listen to advice, commanding troops rigidly. Though war reports didn't say so, in reality they'd lost several battles. Fortunately, losses weren't severe. Currently he and the deputy generals were anxiously seeking solutions, hoping for better developments in the coming spring. I knew the personal imperial expedition wasn't reliable. I had a headache as I told Ruby. His abilities only hinder third brother. Winter arrived, bringing some festive atmosphere to the gloomy palace. On the morning of the Laba festival, I presided over distributing Laba porridge to the entire palace. Only at noon did I have time to pay respects to the Empress Dowager. Just entering the hall, I saw the Empress Dowager and Lily sitting in conversation. Lily's belly was already very large, calculating she should give birth soon. Wonder if it's a prince or princess? I asked with a smile. Lily blushed, stroking her belly. I hope for a little princess. Daughters are always closer. The Empress Dowager laughed. I also want Nana Greymanor. I smiled in agreement, about to speak more when suddenly a eunuch from the imperial presence rushed in, hurriedly greeting the Empress Dowager and me. Your Highness, this servant has urgent matters to report. My heart suddenly tensed. I looked up at the Empress Dowager and saw her expression was also serious. Lily, withdraw first. After ordering, she said, What is it? Speak quickly. This eunuch clearly hesitated, looking at me uncertainly. I said calmly, if it concerns His Majesty, with the Empress Dowager here it's fine. The eunuch then prostrated himself. Your Highness. General Sterling urgently reports great defeat in the northwest. His Majesty is missing. Your Highness, Royal Consort requests an audience. Cannot meet. I sat rigidly in Phoenix Palace's inner hall. After a long while, I threw the teacup out forcefully. Meeting or not meeting at this time. Tell them all to stay peacefully in their palaces. Without business, they're not allowed out. It had been 1 double hour since benevolent Peace Palace received news of His Majesty missing. The Empress Dowager had immediately fainted. As for me, my mind was in chaos with no way to organize my thoughts. Your Highness, Ruby gently reminded, sealing the Forbidden City at this time will cause unrest throughout the palace. I composed myself. You're right. Before New Year, let everything continue as normal. Absolutely don't let the court notice anything unusual. Ruby reminded tactfully again. Your Highness, the royal consort is still waiting outside. Send her back. Say I'm dizzy and unwell, already resting. I irritably rubbed my temples, truly having no mind to deal with them now. Jade had just replaced another cup and poured tea, then muttered irritably, Your Highness, I think His Majesty missing is quite good. This way no one will obstruct General Sterling. What do you know? I said. His Majesty's life or death is now unknown. The nation's foundation shakes while the Northwest watches like a tiger. If we find His Majesty, fine. If not, Marcus is only 9 years old. Even Edward the eldest is only 11. With a young ruler and the nation in crisis, when the capital falls into chaos with internal and external troubles, what should I do then? I angrily punched the bed. That bastard. I still hoped he'd die early and be done with it. But now he dies halfway, creating more trouble for me. So. Jade's eyes brightened as she leaned closer. Why don't we treat it as if His Majesty has already passed in the Northwest? In my opinion, even if His Majesty lives, we can't find him immediately, and chaos will still occur. By the time we find him, it will only further obstruct General Sterling and Your Highness. Right. Tears gradually welled in my eyes. All these years while Alexander lived, I endured so much suffering, suppressed so much grievance. If he's dead, I'll be Empress Dowager. From then on, no one can bully me anymore. But Marcus is still too young. I thought for a while, feeling it still wasn't stable. If the world was at peace, fine. But with the Emperor Father passing and people's hearts unstable, the new Emperor being young lacks power to make officials submit. I'm also not his birth mother. When news spreads outside, it will surely boost enemy morale while dampening our troops. Isn't there still Lord Vincent and General Sterling? With Your Highness and the Sterling family, who dares disobey? Maternal relatives monopolizing power. I shook my head. After ascending the throne, His Majesty has been cultivating his own forces everywhere to oppose the Sterling family. Though that faction hasn't fully formed, by the time Marcus matures, there will still be many years. The Sterling family is indeed too powerful. Just one small slip, and will be rumored to be rallying on the Emperor to command the nobles and bear infamy. I had a headache. Is there any better method? This matter still needs discussion with Mother. The next day, hearing the Empress Dowager had awakened, I set aside everything and hurried to benevolent Peace Palace. In the inner hall, the Empress Dowager sat on her bed looking exhausted at me. Lily had vaguely realized something. Now extremely worried with her large belly, she kept coming to me. Continue like this and you'll have premature labor sooner or later. The Empress Dowager sighed. Mother, Victoria says this may be inappropriate, but the child in her belly is no longer important. What's most important now is Marcus. My heart burned with urgency, no longer caring about prince or not prince. Mother, with His Majesty's life or death now unclear, should we urgently establish Marcus as the new sovereign? I thought the Empress Dowager would get angry, but unexpectedly she covered her face and wept bitterly. Victoria, child, look at me. I've suffered raising this child for half my life. As a husband, he has no virtue. As a father, no affection. As a son, no filial piety. As a sovereign, no talent or virtue, his father was harsh with me all his life. I endured suffering to make him crown prince. I thought I'd finally escaped hardship, yet he deliberately did this personal expedition nonsense, throwing away his life at the northwest frontier. What more can I hope for? Victoria, what more can I hope for? I quickly stepped forward to wipe her tears. You still have your imperial grandson, mother. Marcus is your blood grandson. He only recognizes you as his sole grandmother. Not to mention there's still me. I've been in the palace since childhood, raised by you. I'm like half a daughter to you. I consoled for a while. Seeing the Empress Dowager gradually calm down, I spoke up, Mother, this matter cannot be delayed. We should decide whether to wait for news from His Majesty or establish a new emperor. Establish a new emperor. The Empress Dowager was decisive, surprising me. He can act recklessly as he pleases, but the nation cannot be without a ruler for even one day. Who knows when we'll find this emperor? With chaos everywhere. Alive or dead, uncertain. Her eyes suddenly became sharp, looking straight at me. Victoria, you also don't want him as emperor anymore, right? I was somewhat worried but still dared meet the Empress Dowager's eyes directly. Mother, forgive my disrespectful words. His Majesty with such character truly isn't suitable to be ruler. The Empress Dowager looked at me and suddenly smiled bitterly. Look at us, mother and son. How we misjudged back then. How could you have fallen for such a heartless, meaningless person as a husband? And me, why did I choose such a foolish, talentless person as my son? I smiled bitterly too. And you, why did you choose such a foolish, incompetent person as your son? The Empress Dowager and I looked at each other and smiled bitterly, then cried together. Crying for unfaithful husbands, crying for lives without joy. After a while, we were both exhausted from crying, neither speaking. Marcus isn't suitable to be the new emperor. The Empress Dowager suddenly spoke. According to regulations, Lady Chen has been deposed. Marcus isn't a legitimate son nor the eldest. Establishing a new emperor should establish Edward. But Edward inherited his mother's weak character, truly not capable of great things. That could be overlooked, but importantly, Marcus is still too young. Speaking of establishing a worthy ruler would be hard to convince people. Now the Northwest situation isn't optimistic. If they know the new emperor is young, who knows what will happen? But at this point, is there any better way? I said worriedly. His Majesty has no grown sons. But the late emperor does. The Empress Dowager showed a decisive look I'd never seen before. There are still several grown princes. I was stunned, my heart full of hesitation. Mother, are you referring to Prince Zhuang and Prince Shang? But their fiefs are too distant. They haven't returned to the capital for years. Suddenly summoning them would raise suspicions. Moreover, they both have wives and children. When the time comes, both would be wolves in sheep's clothing. Initially they were exiled to distant frontiers for crimes. Without an edict, they cannot return to the capital. The Empress Dowager's eyes became sharp. Of course we can't establish them. Otherwise, forget Marcus, even we would have no place to hide. Then mother means. I suddenly thought of someone. Could it be Master Qing? The Empress Dowager nodded at me. The late emperor's fourth prince. Over 10 years ago he became a monk, so wasn't in theft. His mother consort Jun also became a nun. Her family has no power and won't threaten us. Most importantly, he doesn't care for worldly matters, won't establish a wife or have children. He can acknowledge Marcus as his adopted heir. Marcus would then become crown prince legitimately. When he matures, he'll succeed to the throne. No one can say anything. But he's a monk, I said in shock. A monk returning to secular life to be emperor, this is even harder to accept than Marcus succeeding. Moreover, though he's a grown prince, how can we be certain he'll always follow our wishes? Rest assured, I understand Consort Jun and her son well. The Empress Dowager patted my shoulder, smiling slightly. Li Shun was once the late emperor's most beloved prince. He's gentle and intelligent. The late emperor repeatedly wanted to make him crown prince. That's also why when Prince Changsha's plot to force him to become a monk was exposed, the late emperor then despised the first prince. Unfortunately, he had an unreliable mother consort. I never understood why Consort Jun, perfectly fine as a favored consort, gave up her position to become a nun, causing her son to also turn wholeheartedly to Buddhism. We don't want to keep him forever. When Marcus matures, he can immediately return to being his master. The Empress Dowager looked confident. Consort Jun owes me a favor. This favor she cannot not repay. The court maintained apparent peace through New Year's Eve and the Lantern Festival. Everyone pretended the emperor was on personal expedition in the northwest, nothing unusual. Only I received the officials' greeting. I calmly told them the Northwest War was progressing smoothly, no need to worry. But underneath, undercurrents still surged. Master Qing was forcibly brought from the temple. When he reached the rear hall of the Cheongqing Palace, he was so frightened he cried continuously until Consort Jun came to console him before calming down. Is this really the crown prince the late emperor chose? I forced a bitter smile. Just weak, that's all. The late emperor always liked such children. The Empress Dowager showed no expression. Since the adopted son she'd painstakingly raised was forced to death by us, she rarely showed any emotion. Nearly half a double hour later, Consort Jun finally emerged, sighing to us, "Sonner will do as you ask. Just speak directly." "It's fine," I gently consoled. "Wait until the Northwest is pacified and the nation stabilized, then Sonner will abdicate." Consort Jun looked toward the Empress Dowager. "This matter probably isn't good. Frequent changes of rulers would harm the court administration." I hesitated, but unexpectedly the Empress Dowager immediately agreed. But during his reign, he must properly fulfill an emperor's role. Absolutely cannot do anything excessive to harm the nation. Consort Jun sighed again. "Sister, you know mother and son absolutely dare not go against your wishes. Years ago, Sonner's life was saved by many people. Using it for you now is only right." The Empress Dowager spoke gently. "Jen, you understand me. If not for this matter, I absolutely wouldn't think of using Sonner. Afterward, you can peacefully pursue your Buddhist practice. The new emperor will respect him as an uncle." Consort Jun nodded, performed the ceremony, then withdrew. I looked at the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager looked at me. After a while she said, "Victoria, I leave the rest to you." I had originally planned to delay until February to announce the emperor's passing, but circumstances forced otherwise. The Northwest was extremely fierce, even third brother was somewhat overwhelmed, losing 3 cities in succession. War reports returning to the capital inevitably alarmed the people. Third brother says there are spies in the army. The Northwest already knows about His Majesty missing. Second brother entered the palace to tell me, "Victoria, we can't hesitate anymore. We must immediately enthrone the new emperor." On the 16th day of the first month, I suddenly assembled all officials to announce that His Majesty had been gravely wounded in the Northwest with no hope of recovery. Fortunately, before dying, His Majesty left a secret edict ordering his only remaining brother in the capital, Master Qing, to immediately return to secular life, be enfeoffed as imperial brother, and upon his passing, immediately ascend the throne to eliminate the Northwest threat and avenge His Majesty. Then Alexandre, holding the secret edict I'd painstakingly forged, stepped up to the emperor's throne. At this moment, second brother led the officials of his faction to prostrate below, calling out in unison, "Long live." The remaining officials, though stunned, had no choice but to bow and follow suit. Thus imperial power was transferred. The new emperor officially ascended. The Empress Dowager remained Empress Dowager. Not only that, she was the true power holder hidden behind the throne. As for me, in my role as imperial sister-in-law, I became somewhat awkward. The new emperor honored me as Empress Dowager Jade Flower, returning to benevolent Peace Palace to teach the princes that the new emperor was a monk returning to secular life, caused waves in court. But on his first day in court, Alexander announced he would adopt the late emperor's son as heir to continue the imperial line. Thus the officials no longer worried. After all, the late emperor left several sons. The nation's foundation would surely have an heir. What else to worry about? Better to worry about the Northwest. Another matter, not very significant, Lady Lily had passed away. Lily died after giving birth. Palace servants reported she bled excessively during delivery due to excessive worry, barely keeping her life. But upon hearing news of His Majesty's passing, she immediately fainted and couldn't survive. Fortunately, the prince was safe. I held the baby lying in swaddling clothes. This was Alexander's fifth son. When the Empress Dowager came to visit, she stroked the little prince's head and said, "I exhausted myself raising children, but the result only chilled this heart. Now I don't want to exhaust efforts raising grandchildren anymore. This child has no mother. Better to list him under your name." I shook my head. What would Marcus think? I've long understood as a childless empress, I just need to treat all princes fairly. That's good enough. Besides caring for the child, I frequently went to the Chuanqing Palace to meet the new emperor. Alexander was a reliable emperor, at least in handling state affairs. He behaved very properly, doing nothing besides striking the wooden fish and chanting sutras when free. In everything he followed my and the Empress Dowager's wishes. The two phrases he said most often were, "What does mother think?" and "What does imperial sister-in-law think?" The Empress Dowager was very satisfied with him, but sometimes I couldn't help wondering in my heart, asking the Empress Dowager, "Is this really the prince the late emperor loved most?" I think compared to the deposed eldest Prince Changsha, he's still somewhat inferior. The Empress Dowager only replied selectively, "This child is clever playing dumb. He knows both mother and son must rely on us to live, so he follows everything. If he hadn't turned to Buddhism and really been made crown prince, he would definitely surpass the late emperor by a level." In early autumn, third brother sent a letter. In the letter, brother straightforwardly cursed Alexander for a series of stupid actions while commanding the army, and expressed contempt for the Western enemies. When the Western enemies heard news of the new emperor ascending, they were shocked while our army's morale rose high. Now victory was clear, surely good news would come soon. Indeed, in early winter, news of great victory arrived. 2 of the 3 lost cities had been recovered. In his letter, third brother said though he feared he couldn't return this year, next year he hoped to return to the capital for New Year. Officials and common people in the capital all rejoiced. The uneasy atmosphere from early in the year had dissipated. Third brother shouldn't pursue too deeply. This year's harvest wasn't very good. If we fight 2 more years, the national treasury will be depleted, I told second brother. The tense situation had eased, making me breathe a sigh of relief too. In my free time, I spent more time with Marcus. Now my main task was teaching Marcus and Vivian. But I never wanted to see Vivian much, because seeing her reminded me of myself, of the innocent, happy Victoria, not a young Buddha statue trapped in the deep palace since her youth. Would Vivian later become a second Empress Dowager or a Secress Dowager Jade Flower? Mother, since father passed away, you seem to have lost your spirit. Marcus worriedly looked at me one day. Really? I raised my hand to touch my cheek, then was shocked to realize my once full cheeks were now sunken. I quickly had Ruby bring a bronze mirror. In the mirror, my once bright eyes now showed wariness like dead fish eyes. I was only 28 years old. This was my 3rd year in the palace. I fled in panic back to my room, rummaging through chests to find my portrait from age 16 when about to marry Alexander. At that time I was full of confidence, believing I had everything a girl could dream of. But who knew the one called my beloved would bring me all this suffering, while glory and wealth were just iron chains binding me tightly. I'd used 12 years to endure everything, exhausting nearly all my life force and losing the best years of my life in this place that couldn't see light. Your Highness, don't think too much, Ruby entered to console me. Not thinking too much. Marcus is right. I opened my eyes wide and smiled, and tears flowed continuously. Ruby, look, over 10 years, I've always hated him. All my strength was used to hate him, calculate against him. Now I've finally won. Ruby, no one can hurt me like that anymore. But what do I have left? I've been swallowed to the bone by this deep palace. Ruby, this life of mine, this breath of mine, what is it all for? For the children, for your brothers, for all your loved ones. Not knowing when, the Empress Dowager had entered. I wanted to visit Marcus, but heard you suddenly returned to your room. Don't talk about just you, your mother. I, and all the other empresses have gone through this. She approached to embrace me, placing my head on her lap. Hurtless husbands, meaningless consorts. Those who can't endure become failures like Lady Chen. Those who endure only get a title and memorial tablet in the Imperial Temple, becoming a name briefly mentioned in history books. I don't know how many times I've cried like you. My days were much harder than yours. No family background, no children. The Empress Dowager didn't care, the Emperor despised me. But in the end, don't I still stand here? And respected consort who suppressed me everywhere, where is she now? Sophia, from Crown Princess concubine to Empress, how long did she lie freely? Life needs hope, Victoria. When I was Empress, I hoped for the late Emperor to ascend. Now I hope for Marcus to mature. Now the nation's foundation is stable, the dynasty at peace. Isn't that very good? As for other things, we have no fortune to enjoy in this lifetime. A ray of sunlight slipped through the window crack, shining on my hair. The Empress Dowager gently stroked my head and said softly, Victoria, look, the sun has risen. From childhood I was Father Emperor's most beloved prince. My mother consort was also the most favored concubine in the harem. Mother consort once told me she had beauty that could topple cities, came from noble birth, and was originally destined to be Father Emperor's crown princess. But the Empress Dowager insisted her fate didn't match Father Emperor's, so they chose Mother Empress who had lower birth. But what did it matter? My mother consort remained the one Father Emperor treasured most, and even I, her son, was Father Emperor's eldest son, always surpassing the legitimate son. From my earliest memories, I saw Mother Consort and Mother Empress fighting endlessly. Whatever Mother Empress decreed, Mother Consort was always first to oppose. Though Mother Empress was unhappy, she didn't dare speak up because Father Emperor always sided with Mother Consort. In this palace, it seemed respected consort held the greatest power. But Mother Consort was never happy. I asked her why she always frowned. Mother Consort told me that as long as second brother existed, I could never become crown prince. I said I'd worked very hard, that Father Emperor always loved me more than that sickly second brother. Mother Consort stroked my head and said it was impossible. As long as a legitimate son existed, the crown prince position would never go to a secondary prince. Then second brother passed away. Mother Consort was very happy, but that joy didn't last long. She wasn't happy anymore. I understood, because Mother Empress had adopted third brother as her son. There was a legitimate son again. Mother Consort hated Mother Empress, hated third brother too. I also hated third brother. Third brother was born to a palace maid. We'd never paid much attention to third brother's existence because he had no mother consort, was always dirty, unloved. Father Emperor didn't like third brother either. I'd never heard him mention this younger brother. But that dirty, inferior child suddenly became Mother Empress's son, with status higher than mine. Was I supposed to watch an inferior prince like that become crown prince? I wouldn't accept it. Mother Consort wouldn't either. She constantly spoke ill of third brother to Father Emperor. Father Emperor already disliked third brother, now even less wanted to make him crown prince. But Father Emperor didn't make me crown prince either. I still had fourth brother, fifth brother, and newly born sixth brother. Any of them could receive Father Emperor's favor. This absolutely couldn't happen. The Sterling family's daughter is entering the palace. Mother Consort excitedly told me she was the crown princess predetermined by the Empress Dowager. If she insisted on marrying me, wouldn't I become crown prince? Mother Consort's eyes shone brightly. I felt it was unexpected. As a dignified prince, how could I rely on relations with a woman to achieve the crown prince position? Too humiliating. When entering the palace to pay respects to the Empress Dowager, I met Miss Sterling. She wasn't devastatingly beautiful, but her proud eyes often showed coldness that made others tremble. She sat straight in red robes, radiating dignity like an empress of the world. I approached, but she didn't even glance at me, as if I didn't exist. You don't bow to this prince. I was somewhat angry. From childhood, no one in the palace had dared be so disrespectful to me. Entering without announcement. Is that a gentleman's propriety? She still sat straight reading, eyes never leaving the page. I grew angrier. You're just a small common girl. What right have you to lecture this prince on propriety? You should learn from the palace maids here. They're much more courteous than you. You want to be crown princess. I think even a palace maid is better than you. She put down her book, looked straight at me, then suddenly smiled. I'd never seen such a brilliant, proud smile on a woman. In that moment, I was suddenly flustered, perhaps embarrassed. But I didn't want to admit it. But the next second, she slowly, word by word, stared at me and said, "Is your highness doubting the Empress Dowager's decision? If your highness thinks this common girl unworthy to be here, then you may return to petition Her Majesty the Empress Dowager to send this common girl down to be a palace maid, rather than relying on power here to unreasonably cause trouble." My face burned hot. For a moment I couldn't think of any words to retort, so I turned and fled from benevolent Peace Palace. Walking far away, my face still burned, my heart even more chaotic. Didn't she know she might become my future wife? Why be so disrespectful to me? I hated Victoria. I didn't follow Mother Consort's words to cultivate feelings with her. Instead, each time we met, we constantly bickered and argued. Each time left me so angry I couldn't control myself, even thinking about how to torment her after she became my wife to vent the hatred in my heart. No, that's not right. How could such a person qualify to be crown princess? I thought irritably, but my face involuntarily reddened. We gradually grew up. I busied myself learning to become a prince accomplished in both literature and martial arts, while she was kept by the Empress Dowager to learn managing the harem. Father Emperor increasingly favored me. At that time, I believed the crown prince position would surely be mine. I began acting against my younger brothers. Sixth brother died early. Fifth and seventh brothers were young and extremely mischievous. I just needed to use a little scheme to turn that mischief into crimes, causing Father Emperor to punish them severely and enfuff them to distant frontiers early. Fourth brother was an oddity in the imperial family, but like his mother consort, was wholeheartedly devoted to Buddhism. I heard before Consort Jun entered the palace, she had prayed to Buddha, and after bearing fourth brother immediately became a nun, leading fourth brother to also not care for worldly matters. I quietly sent fourth brother to a temple. By the time Father Emperor found him, fourth brother had already shaved his head and become a monk, making Father Emperor so angry, he said he had no such son. But I didn't notice third brother. You who always lost to me secretly allied with the Sterling clan. Victoria reported my sending fourth brother to become a monk to Father Emperor. The court also clamored to establish a legitimate son. Father Emperor probably never thought his most beloved son would secretly scheme to harm his brothers. In fury, Father Emperor infected me as Prince Changsha, banishing me to guard the frontier. Everything ended. I witnessed Alexander being made crown prince. I witnessed him marry the young woman I'd secretly loved throughout my youth. I witnessed him being heavily used by Father Emperor. I witnessed him growing stronger day by day. I hated the crown prince. I hated Victoria. I heard the crown princess miscarried. The crown prince took another beauty both talented and beautiful. I heard that beauty bore a son and was made concubine, while the crown princess fell from favor. As for me, at Prince Changsha's mansion at this time, I had nothing to do but sink into wine and women. Her sorrow every night was just another topic added to my leisurely conversations. It became a laughing matter when I drank with subordinates. I didn't worry for her. Really didn't. When drunk, I muttered to myself, I didn't marry, I swear. I only focused on revenge, not bothering with romantic feelings. Or perhaps I'd never again encountered such a brilliant smile. Until I met Isabella. She was a branch member of the Fox family in Riverside, niece of the current Fox family head. The Fox family in Riverside had few people, so she was brought to the main branch for upbringing from childhood. That day she followed her uncle and aunt to my mansion for a banquet. When she saw me, she smiled lightly, making my heart skip a beat. I told the Fox family head I wanted her to stay and serve. The Fox family raised branch daughters precisely to rely on the powerful. This time being able to rely on a prince's mansion was naturally very profitable. During the day I kept her by my side, teaching her how to use beauty to serve others, teaching her the palace's conspiracies. At night I sent her back to the Fox family to avoid others' eyes. Father Emperor passed away. Even to the last moment, he didn't summon me to see him. My good younger brother ascended the throne. He actually didn't establish Victoria as Empress. Hearing this news, I laughed continuously. Victoria, someone as proud as her, how could she endure this humiliation? Wouldn't she immediately commit suicide? I told Isabella. But she didn't commit suicide. She fell ill, gravely ill to the point of near death. I should have been gleeful. Prince, aren't you happy? Isabella helped me grinding. No, no. I waved my hand impatiently. Is it because of noble consort Victoria? She looked at my expression, unable to read happiness or sorrow. What noble consort Victoria? Better if she died early. I spoke like a child throwing a tantrum. Then I realized something was wrong and quickly adjusted my expression. Let's not talk about her anymore. Isabella, I only love you. Alexander indeed held a selection. That good son of his, not even a full year and already busy expanding the harem. I thought secretly under my breath, then turned to Isabella. It's time. I gave her the strongest poison I could buy from an old master in Miao territory at great price. Don't leave any of his children. Isabella, when I sit on the throne, our good days will come. But in the end I miscalculated one step. She would treat her enemies' children as her own. Isabella failed. Failed before her. When sitting across from her at the Ministry of Justice, I knew everything was irreversible. She'd always known how to eliminate problems at the root. Neither I nor my mother consort could survive. Even if I had children, it wouldn't change anything. Looking at her face twisted with resentment, I suddenly laughed. What use was defeating me? Had she lived well these years? Keeping a husband like that, how could she live well? I mocked her being harmed by the one she loved, losing her children, being demoted from wife to concubine. That feeling wasn't pleasant, right? Watching your rival bear and raise children while you… Victoria, even if you save Marcus, so what? He's not your son. When he ascends the throne, who will be Empress Dowager? If I were Sophia, I edict making you die in burial. Oh no, not certain, you might not live to see Alexander pass away, right? She just coldly replied. Whether I live to see His Majesty pass away, who knows? But you certainly won't see tomorrow. No, it shouldn't be like this. I still wanted to ask, did she really never think of marrying me back then? Did she ever think I wouldn't be like him, wouldn't favor concubines over wife? Did she ever think? Your Highness, we found the antidote in Prince Changsha's mansion secret chamber. Everything was too late. Whether to ask or not, what use was it? Her future path, I could no longer see. In the 3rd year since I retired from the Empress position, the Western enemies were finally pacified. Third brother led the victorious army back to the capital for celebration. At this time, the world was at peace, the nation prosperous. I also rarely had time to completely rest and enjoy life in old age. Your Highness. That day I was leisurely teaching some young ladies to tie rope knots when I suddenly saw Ruby rush in frantically. She then bent low and whispered in my ear, Your Highness, the former emperor has returned. What? I immediately dropped the unfinished knotted rope, ignoring the young lady's surprised looks, and hurriedly left the room. Outside, Jade also hurriedly followed, whispering. He was discovered at the southwest corner at Zushan Gate. At that time he was telling the gatekeeper he was the emperor. Fortunately, our people discovered in time. It's unclear how he infiltrated the inner palace. I fear there are still his agents inside. The important thing is, has the court learned of this yet? Investigate thoroughly. Where is he now? Being held at the rear hall of Sanchi Palace. His Majesty still doesn't know. Yes, Your Highness. His Majesty is currently at Cheongqing Palace praying. Taking him to Swanchi Palace was precisely to avoid His Majesty encountering him. What about the Empress Dowager? The Empress Dowager's illness hasn't improved. We haven't reported this matter yet. First, don't report to the Empress Dowager. I'll handle everything. After speaking, I lifted the curtain and entered Shanxi Palace. I turned to look inside the hall and saw a man in tattered clothes with an unkempt beard. When he saw me, he turned and said, "Victoria." I stood looking at him for a long while, as if I no longer recognized this husband of 3 years. Suddenly I burst into wild laughter, laughing until tears rolled down my cheeks. "Haha, Alexander Crown, you're really still alive. You're really still alive." Ruby and Jade quickly supported me from both sides, worried I might fall from excessive emotion. But Alexander just sighed, his voice full of exhaustion and sorrow. "Victoria, I also didn't expect to see you again one day. These 3 years, I escaped death many times to return to the capital. No need to be so emotional." What? He really thought I was happy to see him again. I trembled, pointing at him, but could only laugh without speaking. I just heard him continue. "On the journey back, I understood many things. People often say heaven will give great responsibility to someone, but first must temper their will. These 3 years I've also experienced quite a bit of suffering that ordinary people couldn't endure. Whenever I couldn't persevere, I remembered our imperial ancestors, in the vast ice and snow, buried under piles of corpses, almost having to eat raw meat and drink blood to survive. I heard you've established a new emperor." He looked at me with shocked eyes, then laughed lightly and waved his hand. "Rest assured, I won't blame you. I've thought it through. When my life or death was unclear, you establishing a new emperor to suppress enemies was necessary." The smile on my face had long disappeared. At this point, he still thought the throne would be kept for him. Had his brain broken? I couldn't speak a word, just let him.
Didn't think so. Outwardly agreeing, but in my heart just sighing. Marcus and I truly had no fate. From childhood he lived in Benevolent Peace Palace while I lived in Phoenix Palace. After the late emperor passed, I moved to a chamber in Swanxi Palace while he still lived in Benevolent Peace Palace. Then he ascended, he lived in Cheongqing Palace while I lived in Benevolent Peace Palace. This vast imperial palace, meeting each other once was difficult, let alone talking about childhood sweethearts. Truly nonsensical talk. Of course, we didn't go the whole year without meeting. Every festival when the princes and princesses gathered to play, he always greeted me. "Is Miss Vivian well?" During normal times, my governesses advised me to bring gifts to him. He always accepted and nodded in thanks to Miss Vivian. When he was ill, I also visited. He lay in bed weakly nodding at me. Troubling Miss Vivian. "Miss Vivian, Miss Vivian, Miss Vivian," he called it so much it annoyed me. I threw the wet cloth in my hand to the ground and angrily left. Even first Prince Edward couldn't help but come console me. "That brat is just stubborn, cold outside, but not necessarily so inside. Maybe he's loved you for a long time, just too shy to show it. Believe it or not." I thought for a while, then sincerely answered, "I don't believe it." Not long after he recovered from illness. Certainly not thanks to my efforts. Then not long after, he ascended as emperor. After becoming emperor, Marcus became even colder toward me. I waited for him after court to bring tonic medicine. The inner guards at the door said, His Majesty wasn't receiving guests. I waited for him before bed to bring fruits. The inner guards at the door said His Majesty wasn't receiving guests. I waited for him after dinner to request some books from the Imperial Library. The inner guards at the door still said, His Majesty wasn't receiving guests. I laughed coldly. "At this point you still won't see me. Are you waiting until you're willing to select consorts?" So I lifted the curtain and entered. Just entering heavens. Marcus was intimately conversing with a small palace maid. The three of us looked at each other with 4 eyes. Then I awkwardly opened my mouth. "Sorry, farewell." The next day, first Prince, now Prince Hejayan, ran to Benevolent Peace Palace to report news to me. That palace maid was named Emmeline, no family background, born to farming households in the outer city. She'd served third brother from childhood. The two being intimate was understandable. But no matter what she is, she's just a consort. You're the Empress. Be generous. I hugged my face, tragically crying out. Thinking back, Vivian Sterling, wasted so many years reading and studying to please Marcus. Unexpectedly, he'd long had another as his childhood sweetheart. I was truly just making wedding clothes for others. Prince Hejian scratched his head. What's so good about reading books? He thought for a moment to console me. Then afterward you can read freely. After all, my brother doesn't like you. Trying to please him is useless. Words like spears pierced me. I looked at him, wanting to cry but having no tears. For 2 whole years I practically lived in the Imperial Library because Aunt had reduced supervision of me. I abandoned the 4 books for women, reading from ancient creation myths to the founding emperor conquering the world on horseback. I also met Marcus a few times, but since becoming emperor, he spoke even less. Each time he just looked at me once then hurriedly left. I just bowed once at most. Speaking of which, it had been 2 years since I'd bothered him. What pained me most was Prince Heejayan had to leave the capital. Though Edward's fief wasn't far from the capital, I still cried inconsolably on the farewell day. Don't cry anymore. Edward looked around somewhat awkwardly, then looked at me. You're about to be empress. Why so clingy? Wrong, you haven't been one to cry easily since childhood. Alright, don't cry anymore. Others who don't know will think you're crying for me. I cried while hitting him with my sleeve. The jade pendant I gave you, brother must wear it carefully. It's top-grade jade. If you lose it I'll break your head. Fine, young lady. I'll store it in a triple-locked box, Buriensimes 3 times daily. Stop talking nonsense. Go. I waved my hand, turned my back and returned to the palace. Then went to my chamber and cried until heaven and earth dimmed. The governesses didn't know what to do and were about to report to Aunt. But Aunt was busy watching His Majesty review memorials. In the end, it was the Grand Empress Dowager herself who came to advise, frightening me into quickly stopping my tears. I didn't expect this would be the last time I heard the Grand Empress Dowager speak. Half a month ago, she suddenly fell unconscious. Finally she returned to heaven. Mother suffered too much in life. I saw Aunt wearing mourning clothes wiping tears. Let's quietly not have her buried jointly with Emperor Wen. Let her be buried beside the son she lost when young. This doesn't follow protocol, Mother. I saw Marcus trying to persuade. Finally Aunt still won a bit. The Grand Empress Dowager's clothes and crown were jointly buried with Emperor Wen, but her body rested beside the son she'd missed all her life. Marcus was very unhappy. I saw it was reasonable too. After all, not following protocol, he was a son who couldn't persuade her. He must be very angry. Who knew just days later he did something even more improper. On the 3rd day after the Grand Empress Dowager's funeral, Marcus brought Emma in white clothes to kneel before the spirit tablet. Amid everyone's whispers, I quietly took a piece of watermelon from the tea table to nibble. The funeral had just ended early when Marcus was called in by Aunt for instruction. As for me, I secretly ran into the Chuanqing Palace chamber. Indeed, Palace maid Emma was hiding here, not yet caught by Aunt. Seeing me she fearfully knelt down immediately. I laughed softly. We don't need such formalities. After all, we'll be sisters later. Stand up, sit. Stand up, sit. She tremblingly raised her head. Looking carefully, she was indeed a pitiable weak beauty. I laughed while asking a few questions, surprised why Aunt would allow such a beautiful palace maid to serve beside her son. Then suddenly heard a bang. Marcus charged in Vian. Don't bully Emma. I didn't. I'm not. Your Majesty. Miss didn't bully this servant. Miss is the future empress. Questioning this servant is natural. Before she finished speaking, Marcus had already embraced her tightly. At this moment, this young emperor looked at me full of wariness, seemingly trying hard to control his anger. Miss Sterling, my sleeping chamber doesn't seem to be a place anyone can enter. He spoke coldly. I was gaping at the strange scene before me. An emperor not yet married already embracing another young lady, still being cold to his official future wife. Your Majesty. I swallowed. In my mind appeared those glorious stories about the late emperor favoring concubines and slighting the empress. So the Grand Empress Dowager's funeral, wasn't that a place palace maids could casually attend? Right, Your Majesty. Your behavior like this truly isn't beneficial for you, for me, and especially for Miss Emma here. Don't you understand? I stood up and quickly slipped out of the sleeping chamber. Can't provoke you. I'll excuse myself. Excuse myself. I dejectedly returned to Benevolent Peace Palace, remembering the governess's words about Aunt being demoted from legitimate wife to concubine. If it were another woman, she would have collapsed long ago. How could she maintain bearing like Her Highness? I was that other woman. Now my legs were already weak. Not even married yet, encountering future husband, favoring concubine and slighting wife. What should I do now? Urgent reply needed. I didn't expect just entering the palace, Aunt was already waiting. Rarely did Aunt actively seek me, and now I was so dejected. I quickly performed the ceremony, but Aunt pulled me back. When entering the palace, did your father tell you you'd encounter something like this? I paused, then honestly answered, no. Father also never told me. Aunt's eyes showed some distraction. He only said this is the responsibility of sterling women, the glory of sterling women. But he never told me, to gain this glory, what price I'd have to pay. Aunt turned to look at me intently. Vivian, I ask you, do you still want to be Empress? Did this even need asking? Why did I enter the palace so early? Wasn't it for the phoenix throne bearing the sterling name? I answered without thinking, want, Esmanke. A hard slap struck straight across my face. I was hit senseless. Does it hurt? I asked. I hurt. I nodded. Smake. Another slap. I held my face, completely dazed. From childhood I'd never been touched by anyone, let alone living pampered in the palace. Now looking back, my face would surely swell. Does it hurt? It will hurt more later. Aunt pointed at the phoenix throne in Benevolent Peace Palace's main hall. As long as you decide to sit on that chair, I'd the Grand Empress Dowager, and all the previous empresses who sat on this chair, we all had to endure humiliations much worse than this. Being slapped for no reason, Vivian, feeling wronged. I opened my eyes wide and nodded. Feeling wronged was right. Aunt looked down at me from above. I knew what she wanted to ask. Clearly this was His Majesty's fault. Why hit me? But His Majesty is never wrong. The wrong ones are me, the palace maids, and His Majesty's servants. In this palace no one pursues right or wrong, only His Majesty's favor. Without favor, whether you're Empress or noble consort, you'll be trampled by others. While I live, I can protect you, Vivian. But if I die, then what? Can you rely on your father to protect you? But how can you dare hope the Sterling clan will stand firm forever? The day your father and eldest brother suddenly died. Do you know how the late emperor trampled me? No. Do you still want to be Empress now? Aunt reached out to stroke my face. Vivian, think for yourself. Aunt walked away very quickly, leaving me standing dazed in the main hall. After a long while, I turned to ask the trembling governesses. What Aunt understands, Father surely understands too, right? But why does he still insist I enter the palace? When Aunt summoned Marcus to Benevolent Peace Palace, I was sitting in the front hall, eating watermelon. As soon as he saw my swollen bun-like face, he was startled in fear. His Majesty made a mistake, so I had to accept punishment. I sincerely looked at him. Does your Majesty want watermelon? It's fresh and very sweet. Marcus's surprise quickly turned to guilt. Then he spoke softly. It was my rashness. I'll explain to Mother. He had just entered the inner chamber when I lay flat against the door. Inside, Marcus's anxious voice came out intermittently. Mother, this is your son's fault. But your son truly loves Emma. Mother doesn't need to punish Miss Sterling. But your son really doesn't want to marry her as wife. Marrying someone so stubborn is truly imprisoning. Better to send her home. It wouldn't be appropriate. So your son plans to grant her in marriage to eldest brother Prince Hejayan. I listened and sighed, so Marcus disliked me for being imprisoning. I shouldn't have given him so many books before. Should have learned singing and dancing for entertainment instead. But mentioning Prince Hejayan, why? Were they planning to grant me in marriage to Edward? I quickly covered my swollen face with my hands. Surely I looked extremely ugly now. When Marcus came out, he bowed formally to me, mouth continuously saying sorry, making me so scared I almost fell to the ground. But he just bowed perfunctorily, then ran away quick as wind, leaving me to be called in by Aunt to announce the results of discussion. The marriage contract between me and Marcus was cancelled. Everyone was happy. Palace maid Emma was taken into the harem as consort Hoi, but not made Empress because she wasn't qualified. Not establishing an Empress but taking a consort was because Marcus couldn't wait any longer. I became a female official at the Imperial Library, specializing in editing historical records. Hearing this, I jumped for joy. To avoid directly sending me home and making father lose face, Marcus would personally grant me in marriage. The chosen person was Prince Hejayan. My bright eyes made Aunt smile lovingly for the first time. Unfortunately, we're currently in national mourning. This matter will be secretly communicated to Prince Hejayan. After mourning ends, the edict will be formally issued. Really? He really doesn't have a wife yet. How wonderful. Aunt, how did you know I like Edward? Silly child. When Edward left for his fief you were so sad. We all saw clearly. Don't look at the imperial sister-in-law being cold to you that day. Afterward she even came to me saying, "Why must Vivian suffer like us? Isn't Edward also very good?" We discussed this matter then. Finally I got to live in the Imperial Library as the only official female scholar there, not a high-ranking palace maid serving or managing palace affairs. Each day I organized, checked, and edited books with everyone, occasionally writing some essays. The rest of the time I just waited for news from Prince Heejayan and waited for His Majesty to grant the marriage. Then one day I received a letter from Edward. In the letter he said at his fief he'd met an official's daughter. Upon meeting he was smitten and had already brought her into his mansion. Now he was just waiting for national mourning to end, to submit a petition for marriage approval. He also wrote that Miss Vivian was too noble, a small prince like him felt unworthy. The letter also included the jade pendant I'd once given him, because in his heart he insisted it was our betrothal token, making him uneasy, so he had to return it. Edward was timid from childhood. Now he dares resist orders for his love. Aunt sighed. I cried even more miserably than the day I sent Edward to his fief. Aunt just smiled bitterly. I thought Edward definitely had feelings for you. Turns out I was wrong. Vivian, don't be sad. There isn't just him as a man in the world. I sobbed and wailed. Then too, neither wants me. Do they see me as a monster? Since that's so, I, Vivian Sterling, won't marry anymore. I'll be a female official at the Imperial Library for life. Aunt quickly coaxed me. Fine. Not marrying then. Not marrying, so what? Our Vivian has said she won't marry, so she won't marry. No need to look at those guys' faces. I hugged Aunt and cried myself silly. The result was I truly didn't marry. At first I sank into feelings of abandonment, unable to free myself. Later I gradually immersed myself in work. When Father struggled hard to finally accept reality and wanted to find marriages for me, I used all kinds of reasons to refuse. Now I'm 30 years old, the only female secretary in this dynasty's court. Years ago Marcus disliked me for being stubborn. Now he has to face me at court. After he performs the ceremony, Aunt has completely retired. As for me, like a new Sterling family force rising at court, together with my 2 younger brothers, we often leave him speechless. To this day, whenever he meets me at the Imperial Library, he still shows an awkward expression. Because he and I have never gotten along since childhood. How interesting. He and I once had a marriage contract when young, yet now we still don't like each other. Consort Hoi has borne His Majesty 3 healthy sons. Now she's been promoted to Noble Consort High. Though not Empress, with His Majesty's character of absolutely not establishing an Empress, in the future she'll inevitably become Empress Dowager. The harem currently has very few people, just a few other consorts of no status with no heirs. Prince Heejayan now has many children. Last year he returned to the capital for an audience, bringing his wife and children, 2 sons and 2 daughters, all fair and plump. Prince Heejayan fears his wife. Currently his mansion has no concubines at all, so people often call his mansion, Hedong Prince's Mansion, meaning the wife rules. Is this one lifetime, one couple? I asked Aunt. Aunt smiled but didn't answer. Now Aunt was also old. After overcoming youthful difficulties, Aunt seemed to have let go of all sharpness, daily enjoying time with children and grandchildren in peaceful old age. Father once was very angry at Aunt, thinking she was rebellious to the point the 2 siblings didn't speak for years. Until 3rd uncle returned from guarding the frontier to the capital. Now Father sees me living stably, his heart also somewhat at ease. Vincent's daughter is already 8 years old. That day Father came to visit me, not knowing why he mentioned this. Then let the child study more books at home. Be filial to parents. Later, if she meets someone suitable, marry into a good family. If she doesn't want to marry, come to the Imperial Library to find me. I smiled. Still young now, let her play happily. Still young. Father looked at me and also smiled. Thank you everyone for listening to the story on Panda Tale Healing Channel. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe to receive the earliest notifications.